Chapter 768. All hail Brother Zui. At such a moment, the only one who could make such a nauseating shout so loudly was Fireball. Of course, Sword Demon, Drifting, and the others wouldn't yell blindly. They were all masters with status and pride. However, there were many more people in the very defiant and reborn Purple Crystal who did not know the truth and had been tricked into coming over. When they heard Fireball's shout, some of them played along. Therefore, a trend quickly swept through the entire team. Everyone was shouting loudly, "Brother Zui is mighty. Thank you, thank you." Gu Fei waved at the crowd. "Don't you have any shame?" Slim Waist Dance couldn't take it anymore. "This is courtesy," Gu Fei said with a straight face, making it hard for others to figure out what was going on with him. "Don't waste time. The spell formation for songs and wine is gone. Use this chance to continue." Drifting pushed Gu Fei out. "I just found out some bad news." Gu Fei's expression suddenly turned serious. "What?" Everyone looked at him. "I've died 20 times. Gu Fei said. Everyone was shocked, but they immediately realized what it meant. Dying 20 times and not being able to leave the resurrection point for 20 minutes. This was super bad news. It basically meant that Gu Fei was out of the city war. 20 minutes was enough for the resurrection points outside the city to completely collapse, or the resurrection points inside the city to be destroyed. This was also the reason why Sword Demon didn't dare to fight. He couldn't stand the penalty of dying 15 times, but the penalty of being stopped 15 times. Gu Fei stood at the entrance of the Mage Academy. He couldn't take a step out. The system forcefully formed a wall of air and sealed him in the resurrection point. At that moment, another system notification came from the city: the archer shooting range has been destroyed. The Mage Academy was now the only place left. Some players had been resurrected here. They were the last batch of defenders who had died in the archer shooting range. The Mage Academy had become their only resurrection point. Yutian Shinming was one of them. He cursed as soon as he was resurrected. "It's still early. Line up, prepare to attack." Jian Nanyu shouted, and the formation was formed again. When the attacking players learned that there was only one revival point left, their morale was greatly boosted. They charged towards the Mage Academy without a care for anything else. Qianli, who had just made them vomit blood, was now standing right in front of them, but they were fearless. "Attack!" Jian Nanyu pointed with his sword. The magicians defending the city were the first to open fire. The sky was filled with a sea of fire, and its destructive power was quite shocking. The first wave of players who rushed up recklessly were wiped out. The players didn't care, and the players at the back stepped over the corpses in front of them. However, Countercurrent, who was also a mage, had already seen through their strategy. Their mages were split into two groups, taking turns to attack. Even if this wave was over, it didn't mean there would be a cooldown. "Wait!" Countercurrent roared, stopping the players from taking the second shot. Unfortunately, not many people listened to his words. Apart from the players from his own guild and a few who subconsciously stopped, the majority of the players still rushed forward. Of course, the second wave of spells fell, and another sea of fire appeared. "I knew it." Countercurrent sneered. He waved his hand, and his subordinates charged forward. Now, there was no space for the spells to attack. However, when the third wave of spells fell, although there was only one and it seemed small, it was very powerful. Those who didn't have enough health were all instantly killed. Who else but 1,000 miles drunk could be so valiant alone? "You're just fooling around." Drifting squinted at Gu Fei. "I can't do anything about it." Gu Fei looked innocent. He didn't do it on purpose. When Jian Nanyu shouted to attack, he also fired his cannons. However, his spells were just that slow. He only appeared after the two waves of attacks were finished. In the end, 2 AoE spells accidentally trapped Countercurrent. Countercurrent pounded his chest and stamped his feet, completely losing his composure. He pointed at the Mage Academy and scolded Gu Fei for being the scum of the mages. There were still some survivors of Song and Wine who completely understood the grief and indignation of their guild leader. They swarmed forward, wanting to vent their guild leader's anger. However, Drifting pushed aside a combat spell in front of him, raised his staff, and uttered, "Double Lotus Flame." Like a flamethrower, the spell instantly incinerated the remaining dregs. "Well done." Gu Fei praised Drifting. "Push them out," Sword Demon ordered. The masters understood tacitly and stepped out of the Mage Academy. They didn't retreat, instead, they advanced. Hey, I can't get out," Gu Fei yelled. "Stay on the side. Don't cause trouble," Slim Waist Dance scolded him as she passed by. "Qianli, you're going to get me killed." On the other side, Yutian Shinming was still pincer attacking. "Why are you so late?" Gu Fei asked. "The archer shooting range has been occupied. I've died many times." Yutian Shinming's tears flowed down. "Oh, I thought you were lost again," Gu Fei said. The word "again" made Yutian Shinming's tears flow even harder. At this time, a battle had already broken out outside the Mage Academy. Although the defensive side's magic coordination was quite beautiful, the attacking side had a sea of people, so they couldn't deal enough damage. At this time, the enemy finally rushed in front of them. Jian Nanyu commanded the warriors to resist with all their might. A silhouette flashed past, killing the people who had rushed too far ahead. It was the sword ghost, and like a windshield wiper, it swept through a row of people. After being stabbed by Sword Demon's fog ambush, if they didn't die, they were seriously injured. Jian Nanyu commanded the warriors to help out and immediately killed a row of people. However, Sword Demon's fog ambush had a long cooldown and couldn't be repeated in a short time. The enemy pressed forward again. This was no longer a battle, but pushing Jian Nanyu and the others back. The mages fired their cannons together, and the two sides bombarded each other. The defending side was quite particular, they only threw spells at the enemy's group, but the attacking side was bullying them with numbers. They didn't care about friend or foe, and the spells thrown by the mages in the distance couldn't even touch the enemy's hair, they were completely thrown into their own formation. This was clearly a bit too much, and everyone angrily cursed at them. In the end, this kind of irresponsible behavior didn't happen again. "Hold on, everyone, hold on. All we need is time," Jian Nanyu roared. As soon as he finished speaking, he was killed. No one was invincible in this kind of chaotic battle. PvP skills couldn't be used at all, and cooperation didn't seem to be of much use. However, the effect of equipment came into play. Those with better equipment could obviously survive for a few more seconds. Jian Nanyu was originally the warrior with the best equipment, so he should have survived until the end. However, he talked too much and attracted too many attacks. Instead, he was the first to be killed. This was what the saying, "Tall trees attract the wind," meant. Sword Demon very treacherously hid in the dark, waiting for fog ambush's cooldown to end. The attacking players were too eager to rush into the Mage Academy. Sword Demon was originally in stealth, so when he was discovered behind someone, no one actually cared which side he was on. Everyone continued to rush into the academy. Sword Demon's skill was ready. He didn't hesitate to use fog ambush, killing a group of people and rushing into the academy. "If you want to go in, you'll have to go through me," Gu Fei yelled. Sword Ghoul Jian Nanyu led his team to try and resist the onslaught, but they were drowned by the sea of players and returned to the battlefield. Gu Fei was the only one standing at the goal line. The rest of the team had all resurrected behind him. Gu Fei didn't retreat at all when he saw the black mass of people pushing towards him. He raised his hand and cast a spell, preparing to fight the enemy. However, Sword Demon and Jian Nanyu had already led their teams past him and rushed out. "Flatten them," the attacking players yelled. Skills were flashing everywhere. It was hard to tell if they were enemies or friends. In short, the defending players could only maintain their formation for a while. Once a gap was opened, they would be instantly torn apart. Very quickly, in less than half a minute, a bunch of people were sent back. "It's my turn now," Gu Fei yelled. This time, the attacking players were closer to the front. A few people had already reached the gate. Gu Fei flashed out with dual flame flash and turned them into white light. "Who dares to come forward?" Gu Fei carried his long sword and looked extremely majestic. Tens of thousands of arrows were fired. Perhaps it was a bit exaggerated, but there were at least thousands of arrows this time. Gu Fei looked around. When had the gate of the Mage Academy ever been so crowded? The square was filled with players. The streets leading to the square were also filled with people. The roofs of the houses were also filled with archers. They didn't care if they were close enough or not, they were all firing arrows at them. Gu Fei yelled. The melee players didn't dare to go forward, but the surging arrows were like a black mass of people. The density of the arrows was comparable to that of the mages. Gu Fei scanned the area with his powerful eyesight. He realized that he couldn't even turn into a paper man, let alone move sideways. Teleportation. 6 meters was too close. Gu Fei sighed. The arrows rained down and pierced through him in an instant. The attacking players were excited. However, most of the arrows stopped after this wave. Many people were confused and yelled in unison, "Keep shooting." They still hoped to see the majestic attack from before. "What are you shooting for? Hurry up and take the resurrection point. Shooting arrows is useless." Reflection of Years roared. The players woke up from a dream. The arrows were powerful, but what was the point of shooting endlessly? If they wanted to take the resurrection point, they had to kill all the NPCs inside and keep them there for another 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Did they have 5 minutes? Moreover, it would take some time to eliminate the guards inside with these fellows causing trouble. The attacking players suddenly panicked. What happened to the camp outside? It seemed like they hadn't received any information for a long time. Thinking of this, the guild leaders all went to ask their spies outside the camp. Unexpectedly, the news they got was, "Don't worry, the camp is very stable now. The water flow has become smaller and slower. Maybe nothing will happen to the camp at all." The defending players also received the same news. To them, this news wasn't good. They couldn't attack the attacking side's camp. All their hopes were on this quest. If the system couldn't take over the enemy's camp, then all the efforts of the defending players would be in vain. During this brief moment of stupefaction, several players had already entered the Mage Academy. Ignoring the players inside, they charged at the Mage Academy's guards, slaughtering their way into the academy. Although the guards' stats had dropped by 80%, their personality was still there. They took the initiative to attack the attacking players who stepped into their defensive zone. This was the first time that the attacking players had been so welcoming of the system guards' attacks. This saved them a lot of trouble, as the system guards weren't here to attack. Instead, they were here to be killed. But how could the defending players let them attack the guards so easily? As long as there was one guard left, the attack wouldn't start, and time could be dragged on. Once the guards died, it would be impossible for 200 players to push the attacking players to the Mage Academy's gate. At this moment, there weren't many attacking players. The defending side had the advantage in numbers. A group of experts and the new members they tricked in rushed up, and the attacking players died very quickly. However, the attacking players were already cramming into the Mage Academy's gate. After the attacking players were killed, the guards turned around and were about to return to their original position, but when they saw more people step in, they hurriedly turned back. The defending side moved quickly. Whoever stepped into the Mage Academy would be cut down. The gate was only so big, so the attacking side couldn't make use of their advantage in numbers. The players who were cut down stretched their heads back and roared, "Where's the archers? Where's the mages? Cover! We're all in." As soon as they finished speaking, they were killed. As a result, the people who stepped in continued to roar as they were cut down. The archers and mages at the back were under a lot of pressure. At the very least, long-range attacks required vision, but there was a sea of people. The mages had no vision and couldn't see their targets, so they couldn't cast spells. The archers could use arc shot, but archers needed a lot of space to move around. At this time, all the players were rushing towards the Mage Academy, and the more they rushed, the more space there was. Want to draw a bow? They'd have to pull their hands out of the crowd first. Spread out, spread out. Reflecting Years, who was leading the crisscrossing 4Cs arrow formation, shouted, but it didn't work. Once there were too many people, it became noisy. Only a few people heard him, and even fewer were willing to listen. Those who listened wanted to take action, and those who didn't listen didn't cooperate. The attacking players were overstaffed, and the gate of the Mage Academy was like a bottleneck, firmly blocking them here. This gate was basically the gates of hell. Anyone who stepped in would immediately be killed by the defending players. Chaos, it's all chaos. Unsworn Sword had finally arrived, but he was still a few hundred meters away from the gate of the Mage Academy, and there was already a pile of people in front of him. He couldn't get through at all. Unsworn Sword shouted for them to move aside, but no one paid attention to him. He relied on his strength to squeeze forward, and finally saw his general, Reflecting Years. Reflecting Years was weak, and his face was like an eggplant from being squeezed. Looking to the side, he saw his old opponent going against the flow. He was also weak, and his eyes couldn't be seen. What's going on? Why can't we get in? Unsworn Sword messaged Reflecting Years. Chaos, it's too chaotic. It's going to be bad if this continues. Reflecting Years replied. But, what could they do? The final battle of the city war had developed into such a situation. No one could have expected this. Even the Han family young master was being squeezed like a fried dough twist. No one thought that when 200,000 people were rushing towards a single goal, and gathered in such a small place, there would be such an explosion of energy. They were squeezed to the point that they even suffered internal injuries. Maintain the rhythm of the attack. Clear them row by row. Don't use AoE attacks. Sword Demon made the wisest command at this time. He stopped the mages defending the city from using AoE spells to satisfy their cravings. The main force in charge of clearing the line of the goal line was Gu Fei. One row at a time, and there would be more after the kill. It was so satisfying. The only regret was that the skill had a cooldown, and if he couldn't finish it, he would immediately follow up. Mages. Archers. The players in the front row were still shouting, but when they looked back, it was already difficult to find the mages in the crowd. In such a crowded crowd, the thin bodies of the mages were all squeezed 18 miles away. Climb over the wall. Should we climb over the wall? Someone suggested. The Mage Academy was also a large unit. The wall was more than 4 meters high. At this time, there were only people lying on the wall, and no one could climb over. We lost just like that. We lost just like that. They couldn't even see the entrance of the Mage Academy. The leaders of the major guilds, who were full of hope for victory in the city war, were repeating this in their hearts. The unfamiliar faces squeezing around them made them feel extremely annoyed. How's the camp? The guild leaders asked about the situation outside. Don't worry, it's completely fine. The people outside said. We can't go on like this, the Han family young master, who was surrounded like a fried dough twist, messaged Gu Xiaoshang, even though he didn't know where she was. Then what should we do? Kill. Kill until there's an opening. Han family young master said. Contact the other powerful guilds. Gu Xiaoshang was startled, but he also knew that this wasn't the time to talk about kindness. He quickly contacted the other guild leaders and made this suggestion. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? The guild leaders all slapped their heads. Kill, kill until there's an opening. The guild leaders all ordered. Unsworn Sword led by example. He ignored his surroundings and cast a whirlwind slash. In the midst of the chaos, an opening immediately appeared beside him. On the other side, Countercurrent, who had been bullied and pushed around, also led his mages to bombard the area. Some of them were even forced to interrupt their chants. However, the remaining firepower had already created an opening. The mages scrambled to get into position and continued to bombard the way forward before the others could squeeze in. For a time, the plaza was filled with white light. The attackers were cutting off their losses. This move was very effective. The crowded area was finally under control, and the formation was once again pulled back. The Four Seas arrow formation was quickly activated, and a sky full of arrows rained down on the revival zone. The guild leaders packed up their teams and advanced towards the Mage Academy before the other players could get to them. They're coming in. With the cover of the mages and archers, the defenders had no choice but to retreat. However, the chaos had dragged on for a long time, and there was still no news from outside the city. The defenders were a little disappointed. Perhaps this quest had only helped them destroy part of the attackers' camp, but not all of them. Was it unrealistic to think that 200 people could win against 200,000 people? It's not over yet. Keep your spirits up. Gu Fei roared, and with a slash of his sword, he killed a few of the attacking players. However, a large group of players had already entered the city, including Unsworn Sword. When he saw Gu Fei, he quickly retreated, and then began to flatter him. Brother Qianli, I'm afraid we're going to win this time. Before Gu Fei could say anything, a sudden, deafening sound came from outside the city. At that moment, everyone felt as if the ground beneath their feet had sunk. The guild leaders' message notifications started to pop up. When they opened them, they all received the same message: the camp is gone. Chapter 769. The siege camp was destroyed, and it was destroyed in one fell swoop. The players in charge of monitoring didn't expect that the water, which seemed to have lost its initial explosive power, was actually slowly seeping into the base of the camp. The camp, which had been peaceful for a long time, suddenly sank. The sinking didn't seem to be very deep, but the location of the camp suddenly became low ground. The water flowed downwards and the camp was instantly washed white by the water. The message was sent by the system, so there was no doubt about its authenticity. The notification sound rang out continuously, which of course meant that more than one campsite had fallen. Everyone read the message anxiously, and almost no one dared to count it. However, the truth wouldn't change just because the players didn't dare to count. 5 messages, there were a total of 5 messages, one for each camp, not a single one missing. The system message continued to play coldly, announcing that the Cloud City Defense Army had won the city war and that the Cloud City war had ended. After 15 minutes, the players in the Cloud City region would be disconnected from the game by the system and undergo a small area maintenance for 15 minutes. The main purpose was to change the special game rules during the city war back to its original state and to calculate the guild points and rewards during the city war. This system notification continued to be played. The players who didn't participate in the dungeon war had to pay attention to it. In the past 2 days, they had adapted to the game's rules that it was fine even if they died. Now that it was time to change back to its original form, everyone had to pick up the game style of carefully fighting monsters. Of course, the ones who felt it the most were the players who participated in the siege. The faces of the 200,000 players who were attacking the Mage Academy were ashen. Just a second ago, they had been rushing towards the Mage Academy with all their might, but now, they had all stopped. Silence, extreme silence. Gu Fei had just killed a row of players when he received the notification. Following which, the players attacking the stronghold came to a complete halt. Of course, Gu Fei had also read the notification. Afterward, he saw the ashen expressions of the players before him. Some were disappointed, some were resentful, some were depressed, and some were frantic. Gu Fei scratched his head. At this time, what should he say? He looked left and right. Sword Demon and the other experts were all there. Their expressions were also very complicated. We won. We actually won. This was what they thought. We lost. We actually lost? This was what the players thought. Qianli was a big problem when he was drunk. Sword Demon was also very difficult to deal with. Moreover, he had created a guild to recruit people. Although these people had been causing trouble for the attacking side, to be honest, no one believed that these people could have a decisive effect on the city war. They just thought that these people were a bit of trouble. On the defending side, Gu Fei, Sword Demon, and Drifting were forced to join the defending side by the system. They couldn't join the attacking side even if they wanted to. Afterwards, the players who joined the guild were all neutral characters who didn't participate in the city war. They didn't care whether the city won or lost. Now that they joined, most of them were thinking about something else. Then there were the girls who had been reborn into the purple crystal. They were a group of people with no ambitions. They participated in the siege just to join in the fun. In terms of strength, they were the weakest. They were also a group of people who had no expectations for the city battle. It was this group of people who actually won in the end. This surprise was actually very unexpected. Miracle, it really is a miracle. Drifting mumbled. We actually won. Sword Demon looked at Gu Fei. One quest took care of the attacking side. This quest is too awesome. Yutian Xinming said. This quest, I think, now isn't the time to analyze this. Be happy, Brother Yu. Brother Yu furrowed his brows and was about to think about this exciting quest, but he was interrupted by Jiannan Yu. Winning the city war would definitely bring them a lot of benefits. Jiannan Yu was extremely excited, as if he had won the lottery. We won. We actually won. At this moment, an unknown player confirmed the system notification over 10 times. After confirming that this wasn't a dream, he finally let out a shout. The others came back to their senses and were quickly infected. They all started to laugh. Inside and outside of the Mage Academy, it was like heaven and hell. Gu Fei was standing on the border between heaven and hell. His emotions were relatively stable. The attacking players looked at the excited expressions of these people and were speechless. But there was nothing they could do. This was the rule of the game. Even though the ending was unbelievable, it was the truth. Congratulations. At this moment, Gu Fei and Sword Demon received congratulatory messages from the leaders of Oathless Sword and Countercurrent. At this moment, these people at least maintained their poise, even though they didn't know how to greet Gu Fei and Sword Demon in their hearts. Thank you. It was just luck, Gu Fei replied. He wasn't being humble, he was speaking the truth. AI, luck. Why didn't I get hit by luck? The leaders all sighed. However, not all of the 200,000 people were like them, accepting defeat to preserve their pride. Some people left in anger, some cursed in their hearts, but there were also some who suddenly rushed into the Mage Academy together. They didn't say anything. The people who rushed in all had red eyes. There was only one expression on their faces, kill. Some of the defending players were shocked, while others were calm. Veterans like Sword Demon were the latter. They had already foreseen that such a situation might happen. At this moment, there was no reason to reason with them, and there was no way to reason with them. The only thing they could do was kill. Even though winning was a miracle and a fluke, it was an honorable victory. Sword Demon and the others could understand and even sympathize with the disappointment of the attacking players. However, it didn't mean that they were willing to be punching bags for the attacking players to vent their anger. However, not everyone was like this. Some defending players decisively chose to go offline before the attacking players arrived. Some smiled and didn't fight back, letting the attacking players kill them to vent their anger. There were also some who were more despicable and used words to provoke the other side's scars. Sword Demon wouldn't do this. Gu Fei wouldn't either. If the Han family young master was here, he would most likely be the leader of this group. The only thing Gu Fei Jian Ghost did was to fight, and continue to fight in a methodical manner. The Mage Academy was even more chaotic. Skills and spells flew everywhere. Because the rules hadn't been reshuffled, the system guards still ran out to attack the attacking players like before. Therefore, there were some whimsical people who tried to kill the guards and try to salvage their defeat. Sword Demon and the others weren't such delusional people. The system messages that kept repeating made it very clear, the battle was over. In this battle, there would no longer be any points to be gained. And those whimsical people, after getting rid of the guards, didn't receive any system notifications. They finally gave up and didn't want to fight anymore. However, there were still people attacking the defending players to vent their anger. Some players died 25 times and were still sent to the 15th zone like before. Both sides were fighting in a chaotic battle. There was no organization or tactics. It was just fighting. The 15 minutes were spent in such confusion. Of the 200,000 attacking players, most of them dispersed. However, there were many who stayed and insisted on fighting the defending players. In such a chaotic battle, a considerable portion of the defending players went to the 15th zone. At this time, after the system notification, all the Cloud City players were disconnected from the game by the system. The active Brother Yu immediately rushed to the forum, but there were faster players who had already posted the results of the Cloud City battle. In just 15 minutes, the post had been pushed to the top more than 1,000 posts. Most of the replies were, it can't be, and so on. At this time, all the Cloud City players went offline. The forum was even more lively. With a gentle swipe of the page, dozens of related posts appeared at the same time. In a short time, there weren't any long technical posts. Most of them were sighs or curses. Brother Yu's mind had long been circling and brewing. At this time, he seized the time to quickly carry out his technical analysis. Although he had never followed Gu Fei on a mission, it wasn't Brother Yu's personality not to gossip. He asked this and that, and the whole process was already clear to him. After a few minutes, there was finally a technical analysis of this city battle. After reading it, Brother Yu snorted. How would those attacking players know so many twists and turns of the defending side of the city, such as Gu Fei and the others? The whole thing had to start from Qinli's drunkenness. Brother Yu was full of gossip. After 15 minutes, he hurriedly returned to the game. Actually, Brother Yu really didn't want to put down his post at this time, but he had no choice. As he wrote, he realized that there were still some details that needed to be understood by Gu Fei and the others, so he reluctantly returned to the game. After 15 minutes, there were many people who calmed down. Although everyone was still looking at each other in the Mage Academy after going online, there were finally no more people fighting. Moreover, they couldn't move anymore. Now, the revival zone had also returned to the safe zone setting. When the defending side came up, of course, the most important thing was the reward, but they didn't receive any system notification. What happened? Everyone was a little uneasy. Frankly speaking, they also felt that their victory was too miraculous. Maybe the system wouldn't recognize it. Perhaps it'll only be distributed after all the main cities' city wars have ended. That's right, that's it. Brother Yu thought on the bright side. That's probably it. The others nodded. After that, everyone began to look at each other. What should they do now? Get out of the Mage Academy. But there were still many attacking players, and the square outside hadn't completely dispersed. Would they still attack? If they fought now, they would drop levels if they died. Sword Demon looked around. The attacking players were also in a mess. They rushed into the Mage Academy without any organization, and there was no leader to talk to. For a moment, they didn't know who to talk to. Some people seemed to have left, but who knew if these guys had really calmed down. After a short discussion, everyone made the decision to stay in the Mage Academy for a while. Brother Yu was very happy with this decision, and happily ran to interview Gu Fei. At this time, Sword Demon saw that outside the gate of the Mage Academy, Sword Without Oath and the other guild leaders were walking in this direction. The moment they stepped into the Mage Academy, the expressions on their faces changed. This was a place that they had tried so hard to enter, but now they could finally enter easily. However, what was the use of this? When the guild leaders entered the academy, they saw Qianli and Brother Yu chatting in a corner. They didn't notice them, but Sword Demon kept looking at them. Then, they walked over to Sword Demon. Congratulations. The few of them said what they had heard before. Their expressions were quite twisted, and they didn't try to pretend. Everyone knew that they must have said these blessings with pain and reluctance. I was just lucky. Sword Demon said. Luck is luck, but in the end, there is still a certain amount of strength. The guild leaders smiled bitterly. Just the things that Qianli did to them when he was drunk, if it was any other player, they wouldn't believe that they could do it. Even if they had better equipment than Qianli. After dealing with him for so long, they all knew that Qianli's strength was mainly based on his skills and his equipment. Without equipment, his strength would be greatly limited. But if he didn't have the skills, then he wouldn't even be Qianli, he would just be a passerby. Brother Sword Demon, what a bold guild name. Very overpowered. Unsworn Sword wanted to laugh, but at this moment, he really couldn't bring himself to laugh, so he could only reply dryly. It's just a friend messing around. Sword Demon scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Ahem, I wonder what Brother Sword Demon plans to do in the future. Sword Without Oath asked. I haven't thought about it yet. Sword Demon answered honestly. If there's anything you need help with, just let me know. We're old friends. Sword Without Oath finally smiled. Sword Demon smiled and didn't deny it. After that, Against the Current, Unchung Mutsu, and Black Index Finger also expressed their attitudes, and the content was more or less, if there's anything, just say it. Sword Demon still smiled and nodded, but he didn't express his attitude. He was more clear that these guild leaders were already in public relations. Obviously, they all valued very overpowered development potential. As for whether they would continue to appease or suppress in the future, it would depend on time. Sword Demon was experienced, so he understood these things very well, so he randomly expressed his confused attitude. The four guild leaders turned their heads, wondering if they should go to the corner to communicate with Gu Fei, but suddenly they saw Gu Fei raise his head and wave his hand. The four were quite surprised, and just as they were about to go up, they saw Gu Fei wave at them again. Why did he say hello? The four were stunned for a moment, then immediately realized that one of the waves wasn't directed at them. The four quickly turned around and saw that Han family young master had also arrived at the Mage Academy, Gu Xiaoshang, and a few other second-tier guilds. Although they weren't as high-end as the 5 major 6th-tier guilds, they all worked hard to run their own businesses, and at this time, they all came to establish a relationship with Sword Demon. Sword Demon couldn't help but smile bitterly. Gu Fei played a big part in the defense's victory. He was also the one who received all the quests, which would definitely be converted into a lot of points. However, there was one thing. Gu Fei himself belonged to the Reborn Amethyst. Although the two guilds were very familiar with each other, the system wouldn't treat them as one, so the main reason for the defense's victory was actually Reborn Amethyst. These guild leaders probably didn't know about this, and in their hearts, they probably didn't take Reborn Amethyst seriously. Sword Demon was socializing, and many guild leaders wanted to invite him for drinks and meat. Sword Demon could only use, "there's still time," to thank them. Most people actually used this method to express their enthusiasm. Most of them didn't really think that they would be able to eat together immediately, so they didn't really insist. This went back and forth for a long time. The attitude of these guild leaders also represented the attitude of their guilds. The guild members were restrained, and no matter how much they hated Sword Demon and the others, they wouldn't openly show hostility. As for the other players, when they saw that the top guilds in Cloud City had begun to establish a relationship with the defense, they didn't dare to cause any more trouble, even though they were unhappy. At this time, another voice rang out. Unscathed in battle rushed into the Mage Academy. As soon as he entered, he saw a few of his brothers and scolded, "Fuck, you bitches, you actually won. There's no justice in this world. Ha, you're regretting it now." Yu Tian Shinming laughed. I'm a mature man who finishes what I started, unlike some brats. Unscathed in battle looked at Yutian Shenming with disdain, then ran to Gu Fei. Qianli, hurry and add me to your guild. Huh? Gu Fei was puzzled. Stop pretending, aren't you the guild leader of Reborn Amethyst now? Unscathed in battle said. Oh. What about your guild? Gu Fei asked. I retreated, of course I retreated. When you guys established your guild, I gave my guild leader a heads up. I said that my best friends have already established their guilds. After the city war, I have to go and help out. Wu Shang said. There's actually such a thing. Gu Fei said. Of course, don't tell me you doubt my character. Unscathed in battle said. I don't doubt it, but the problem is, your best friend's guild seems to be on Sword Demon's side. Gu Fei said. Cough, you're also my best friend. How could I neglect you? You must be very lonely being reborn in the purple crystal, right? Don't be afraid, now you have a brother to support you. Unscathed in battle said. You're too shameless. Gu Fei couldn't take it anymore. Come, hurry and add me. Unscathed in battle looked like he was about to sacrifice himself. At this time, Gu Fei's gaze had already turned to the other side and said, What's up? The person who came was July. In all fairness, she and Gu Fei were more or less acquaintances. Now that she was coming over to Gu Fei's side, there was most likely something going on. July nodded and said, It's like this, we're discussing to merge Reborn Amethyst and Against the Gods. Merge? Gu Fei was startled. Actually, we girls didn't do much in this city war, but now the rewards will all fall into our hands. If the two guilds merge, do you think the rewards will be split together? July said. Gu Fei heard this and understood. Although Reborn Amethyst had added a lot of people, in the hearts of July and the others, their guild was still a team, even if some of the girls had been transferred to Against the Gods. But if the guilds merge, we still don't know if the quest rewards will be shared or not. Brother, you said. Chapter 770. The rewards don't seem to be coming out immediately. From the looks of it, won't it have to wait until all the main city battles are over? In that case, we can go and consult them about this issue. I think the system will answer this question for the players, right? July quickly answered Brother Yu's doubts. It was obvious that she had already thought about it. That's right, I'll go ask around. Brother Yu actually had enough chatting with Gu Fei and couldn't wait to continue writing. Asking around was just a convenience. Compared to spamming, merging guilds was a small matter. Brother Yu immediately went offline. Gu Fei looked at July and said, If we merge, how do we calculate the guild levels? Add them up. Of course not, we'll calculate it according to the high level. July said. Then our total number of people will exceed it? Gu Fei said. Just remove a few people. July said. You want all the girls to leave and then regroup Amethyst, right? Gu Fei saw through July. July nodded. Oh, that's not bad. Gu Fei nodded. This time, they were recruiting using the name of a girls' guild. Among the people that came, there would probably be people with bad intentions. These kind of people would always be a problem for the girls. Just like the guys from Eternal Life in the Flower Bush. The things they did might seem interesting when it happened to others, but when the target was themselves, no girl would treat it as an enjoyment. What about you? July asked. What about me? Are you still with us? July asked. Gu Fei was startled. He didn't think that July would actually ask this. Of course he didn't want to stay in a girls' guild. This was a good opportunity. If he stayed there without saying a word, then he wouldn't have to be embarrassed in the future. He didn't think that July would actually ask. This girl was still as strict as ever. Ha, you're not short of people now. Do you still need me to make up the numbers? Gu Fei was quite calm. I knew you would say that. July curled her lips. Gu Fei spread his hands, and the two of them remained silent. Unscathed in battle was scratching his head anxiously. He felt that Gu Fei was an idiot. He was the only man in a purely female guild. How cool was that? This guy actually took the initiative to give up. What was even more infuriating was that July specifically asked this question, indicating that she still hoped to keep Gu Fei, but this guy was not understanding at all. Unscathed in battle could only blame July for not asking him first. He would have agreed without hesitation. In the end, this miracle didn't happen. After July left, Gu Fei looked at Unscathed in battle and said cheerfully, "So, do you still want to add me to your guild?" "Add my ass." Unscathed in battle stood up resentfully and went to find Sword Demon. Gu Fei originally wanted to rest after disconnecting for 15 minutes, but he was still a bit curious about what kind of amazing rewards there would be for a miraculous victory of 200 people over 200,000. In the end, he didn't get to see the rewards, and he was dragged around by Brother Yu for a long time about the things he did. Now that Brother Yu was gone and July's topic was over, Gu Fei had nothing to do. Just as he was about to go offline, he suddenly saw two players enter the Mage Academy. Their gazes landed on Gu Fei and they shouted, "Qianli." Gu Fei looked and saw that it was Duo Mu and Mudo. He sighed. This time, he would have to waste half a day talking. As expected, when Duo Mu and Mudo heard about the miraculous victory in Cloud City, they obviously rushed over to interview him. It had been almost an hour since the end of the city battle. Duo Mu and Mudo were extremely anxious. News needed to be timely. As a result, after the greeting, the two immediately threw out a string of questions. "Why didn't you two come earlier?" Gu Fei was gloomy. "This is already the fastest." Duo Mu and Mudo were extremely nervous after hearing this. "Did someone else interview you already?" "Oh, not an interview, but it's close." How could Gu Fei not know why Brother Yu asked so many questions? "What do you mean?" the two asked. "It's Brother Yu asking a lot of things," Gu Fei said. "Ah." The two were shocked. As veteran game reporters, how could they not know Brother Yu's habit of pouring out information? Now that Brother Yu had a grasp of the situation, it wouldn't be long before he would post on the forums. After that, a few websites would repost it. By the time Duo Mu and Mudo's drafts come out, there wouldn't be anything new anymore. "We definitely can't be faster than Brother Yu. How about we get the editor to keep an eye on it and repost Brother Yu's posts when they come out? We'll see if there are any other selling points we can write about." Mudo and Duo Mu discussed. "That's the only way." Duo Mu was gloomy and begged Gu Fei, "Qianli, you have to give me some exclusive information." Gu Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's just a small matter. How can there be any exclusive information?" "Alright, then first answer a few of my questions." Duo Mu was helpless and could only start as planned. While Gu Fei was being interviewed, the Sword Demon had already finished meeting with the guild leader. After they left, their companions came. July and Gu Fei talked about it and then came to discuss it with the Sword Demon. The Sword Demon was kind and even thought about the reward for July and the others. "That's nothing. We didn't do much," July said. The Sword Demon shook his head. From a battle perspective, the girls' efforts were limited, but they did run quite a few quests and ran quite a few errands. Without Reborn Amethyst, who knew how long it would take for them to gather together? Without Reborn Amethyst, the new recruits wouldn't have a place to settle. Even in battle, the girls couldn't compare to elite experts, but compared to the players, the difference wasn't so great that it was negligible. The girls who were reborn as Amethyst Crystal reincarnated would always be more qualified to receive some rewards than these people. Especially if they had to leave the guild and form a new one, then the benefits of their guild would be gone. In fact, this was the reward that every guild sought in the city war, the division of power. Reborn Amethyst is about to level up, right? The Sword Demon suddenly said. July nodded, "Soon." "Then why don't you take advantage of this opportunity and rush to level 1? When the time comes, you'll be a level 3 guild." At least you can get the reward. The sword demon said. Oh, that's fine. No one would refuse a reward. July was the guild leader of Reborn Amethyst. She knew better than anyone how far away Reborn Amethyst was from level 3. If they focused their efforts, they would definitely be able to do it quickly. Thus, July and the sword demon went to look for Gu Fei. Gu Fei was in the middle of an interview. The two reporters were naturally unhappy that the sword demon and July had interrupted them, but they couldn't show it. They could only wait patiently at the side. Level 3. Oh, right, there's still the reward. Gu Fei had forgotten about this. He thought that July and the others were about to leave the guild. Gu Fei opened the guild channel. The messages in the channel kept flashing, but Gu Fei had long trained to ignore the messages in the guild channel since he was in Reborn Amethyst. As soon as he opened the channel, the messages flew up. It was even faster than when there were only the girls gossiping. Gu Fei casually glanced at a few lines and was very disdainful. Now that the city war had ended, these fellows who were caught at the last minute to make up the numbers started to make friends, especially with the ladies. A few ladies who were Reborn Amethyst and wanted to speak in the channel were surrounded by the crowd. Too perverted. Gu Fei was too pure. He had been in Reborn Amethyst when he first entered the game. He had always been surrounded by girls whenever he appeared. He didn't know that in a normal guild, there were more men than women. All the girls were treasures. The scene in Reborn Amethyst wasn't perverted at all. It was the culture of the game. Everyone, quiet down. Listen to me. Gu Fei's voice in the channel was instantly drowned out. You can temporarily increase the speaking privileges in the channel. July guided Gu Fei step by step. Gu Fei was so bold. He directly said it so that only the guild leader and above could speak. Thus, the guild channel instantly became silent. It became his personal domain. Quiet down. Gu Fei said. It was very quiet. He had to be quiet even if he didn't want to. There's something I want to say. In this siege war, the cooperation between Reborn Amethyst and Against Logic was very successful. Now the two guilds are preparing to merge, but the guild's level isn't enough to accommodate the number of people from both guilds. However, Reborn Amethyst is just a little bit away from reaching level 3, so please work hard. Take advantage of the time before the quest rewards are given out to you. Alright, does anyone have anything to say? No? Then it's settled. Everyone in the guild was sweating profusely. He was the only one in the channel who could speak, yet he pretended to ask for opinions in a democratic manner. The others couldn't speak, so he just acted as if there were no opinions. Qianli was speechless. As expected of a domineering character. Before he could finish his thoughts, another sentence suddenly popped up in the channel. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to change the speaking privileges just now. So again, does anyone have any objections? Gu Fei really forgot. July, who was beside him, quickly reminded him. Another patch. Everyone in the guild was sweating again. Was this expert a retard? However, the guild and Against Logic's cooperation were quite clear. They also knew that Against Logic had a bright future. All the elite experts were there. With the two guilds merging, there would be experts and girls. It was a wonderful thing. As a result, the players expressed that they had no objections. Some of them were already trying to get close to Gu Fei. This was their guild leader, the #1 expert in the game. How could they not get close to him? To reach level 3, we just need to do 6 intermediate quests. Now split into 6 groups. Leader, follow me to accept the quest. Gu Fei said. Actually, he was just giving instructions to July. He didn't understand these things. The grouping was naturally a mess. In the end, they realized that they didn't have enough clerics, so the team was very incomplete. They could make do during the siege war, but not now. Without a cleric, fighting would be very dangerous. If they died, they would drop levels. Cleric Cleric, come over here. Gu Fei said to Sword Demon. Now. They're all waiting to receive their rewards. If they quit, the rewards will be gone, right? Sword Demon said. Gu Fei thought about it. That was true, but he immediately reacted. Who wants them to quit? It's just that if there's a battle, they'll come and help. Sword Demon thought about it and scolded himself for being muddle-headed. However, he was against logic and there weren't many clerics on his side. Gu Fei looked around and saw Han family young master standing there. He was very angry. Be more self-aware. Didn't you hear us calling for a cleric? Han family young master rolled his eyes. He really wanted to throw the bottle in his hand at Gu Fei's head. If you don't get to level 3, you won't have a spot. Gu Fei said. Are you an idiot? Han family young master felt that Gu Fei's threat was very childish. You alone should be enough to support a large team. Gu Fei was prepared to entrust Han family young master with a heavy responsibility. A team of 20 people only had him as a cleric. A normal cleric definitely wouldn't be able to take care of such a large team. Han family young master only laughed in disdain. It was obvious that he didn't take it seriously. Thus, Gu Fei selected his men, and the young master of the Han family soon received an invitation to join the team. Upon entering the team, he saw that they were all girls, a purebred member of the reborn Amethyst team. Even Han family young master couldn't help but be moved. The pressure was too great. You're ruthless. 23 pig-like teammates. Han family young master gave Gu Fei a thumbs up. Hey! July was unhappy. Even if the girls weren't good at the game, there was no need to be so direct. Just make do. We're lacking clerics. Gu Fei comforted July. July was also helpless. She was recruited together with Brother Yu. Of course, she knew that they were lacking in clerics. After that, they divided the clerics into different teams like they were treasures. At the same time, there were also the elite experts who helped out in battle. In the end, the clerics were more or less enough. Han family young master's team was supported by one cleric. Gu Fei led a team. He also only brought one cleric. These two teams saved a few spots. The other 4 teams were divided. They weren't rich, but at least they had enough food and clothing. After that, the leader of the 6th team prepared to go with Gu Fei to accept the quest. Duo Mu and Mudo were still pitifully waiting for the interview. In the end, Gu Fei was busy. There was no choice but to follow the team. The players from the 2 guilds weren't concentrated in the Mage Academy. Most of them were in the 15th area. Of course, the 15th area had already been destroyed. These people were rushing to the city. The 6th team arrived at the guild building. It was very easy to accept the quest. The 800 guilds that attacked the city had just lost the city war. They were still in a bad mood. How could they be in the mood to do the guild quests? As for the players who didn't participate in the city war, they were living in the wild. Even if they came back to do the quests, they wouldn't be as fast as Gu Fei and the others. When the 6 of them arrived at the guild building, there were very few people. After accepting 6 quests, they contacted their team members to carry out the quests. Intermediate guild quests were very difficult to do alone. However, it wasn't difficult if you gathered a team. It was basically just killing time. The 6 teams successfully completed the quests. When they returned to the guild building, the reborn Amethyst rushed to level 3. In the process, Duo Mu and Mudo finished their interview with Gu Fei and went to write their draft. However, Brother Yu still hadn't climbed online. There was no answer to the merger. There weren't any more group activities, so the players dispersed to do their own things. Gu Fei kicked the position of the guild leader back to July and went offline. On Brother Yu's side, the first thing he did after going offline was to write his draft. He did his top priority before asking about the guild merger. This should be a very reasonable question. There was no reason for the system to not tell the players. Brother Yu didn't look for any acquaintances. He prepared to go to the consultation section and post a question. In the end, when he went there, someone had already asked a similar question. Brother Yu clicked on it and saw that the administrator had already given the answer. The reward will be given to the one with the more generous reward. In other words, one of the two guilds will be directly ignored. Brother Yu immediately had the urge to curse. When he scanned the post, there were already people scolding him. Moreover, the scolding went on for a few pages. However, the administrator's temper was really good. He didn't delete the scolding reply. He only replied a few pages later. Hehe, I suggest you merge the guilds after receiving the reward. Brother Yu blushed. The administrator's gentle words made him see the other party's sense of superiority in terms of IQ. The problem was originally very easy to solve, but players liked to think repeatedly and deeply. Brother Yu was afraid that the two guilds had already begun to merge, so he hurriedly entered the game. When he saw that his good friend Qianli was drunk and wasn't there, he inexplicably became nervous. In the end, Sword Demon had already asked him about the merger. You haven't merged yet, right? Brother Yu hurriedly asked. Of course not, Sword Demon said. Fortunately, you haven't. Brother Yu breathed a sigh of relief. If we merge, the reward will be given to the one with the higher reward, just like how the guild level is given to the one with the higher reward. Brother Yu had a little hope at this time. He hoped that Sword Demon would nervously ask, then what should we do? Then he could show his sense of superiority in IQ and gently throw out the administrator's words. Does it feel great? In the end, it was Sword Demon who said, oh, then we can only merge after we receive the reward. Brother Yu let out a disappointed "n" sound. After sending the information, Brother Yu remembered his post and quickly went offline to go to the forum. His Cloud City War report was really popular. There were a lot of clicks and replies piled up in an instant. But soon, many related posts sprang up like mushrooms after a rain, each winning with a title, such as, Cloud City, the place where dreams and miracles begin, unfulfilled ambition, 200,000 players in Cloud City lost a good game, and, who decided the life and death of the city war. Each title was scarier than the other. All of them came from major game websites and were then transferred to the forum. However, when he went in to take a look, Brother Yu's nose was almost crooked from anger. Almost all of them had used his battle report as information. To be precise, they had transferred Brother Yu's out, but in the end, it had been treated as a novelty and had been transferred back. As a result, because of the gorgeous title, the posts quickly surpassed Brother Yu. His Cloud City War battle report, these dry words were really not tempting, and the players couldn't tell who copied these similar contents. In the end, every post was followed by disdainful voices. Until another post, standing in the clouds, looking down at the world from a bird's eye view, drunk Qianli, a godlike existence, appeared. This post finally used a different angle, a different style of writing, and a different concept to describe the process of the city war in Cloud City. The full text had Qianli as the main character, and it was written like a novel. In addition, the author was a famous journalist in the online gaming world, and it instantly defeated the other posts. Damn, is it that exaggerated? After Brother Yu finished reading, he couldn't help but admire the reporter's courage. Things that were 70% would be described as 10%, and he would often use some words like, maybe, who knows, to provoke the reader's nerves, and let the reader imagine in a more exaggerated way. Qianli was drunk. According to their way of writing, it was really a godlike existence. Sigh, public morals are degenerating day by day. Brother Yu looked at his simple, true, and well-founded post that no one was interested in, and he was sad. Chapter 771. After Gu Fei finished his quest, he logged out of the game. However, Sword Ghost and the others were still there, conversing with the players in the guild. Recruitment was rather urgent during the city war, so they did not pay much attention to it. However, Sword Demon had already explained the principles of the guild. In fact, the rules of every guild were more or less the same. It was nothing more than harmony, helping each other, actively participating in activities, and not stirring up trouble. Sword Demon was merely talking about these old things, and there was nothing new. However, the serious attitude he displayed was not something an ordinary player could match. Sword Demon was a person who truly loved the game as much as his life. Unscathed in battle saw that the guild was full and could not join for the time being, so he first joined Reborn Amethyst. He was still fantasizing about joining the Victorious City Defense Guild and getting some rewards, which was met with disdain by everyone. As for the other experts, Wandering Sword and his group of 7 did not mind and did not plan to leave the guild. Strange Eye and Yen Xiaozhu, on the other hand, were worried about their friends in Xia Fog City and were slightly hesitant. Changing cities could basically be considered as changing servers, and it was not a decision that could be made easily. As for Drifting and the other 2, they were completely used to running around and mingling in guilds. For now, they expressed that they would play in this guild for the time being. Of course, Sword Demon would not mind having a few more experts. In short, the members were maintained. Sword Demon had a simple conversation with everyone, and also brought some words to Reborn Amethyst's side. In the end, they decided to wait until the 2 guilds officially merged before seriously discussing the development of the guild. The official merger would naturally have to wait until the end of the city war. Currently, less than 1/5 of the main cities had completed the city war, but according to the information on the forum, most of them had collected important quests and were about to complete them in one fell swoop. However, there were a few main cities that still had no clues. This situation was the most serious for Linshui City. Not only did they not discover any quests, but they also suffered a great loss in the battle. This city also required ships to land and fight. Faced with the organized resistance of the system, the players really could not withstand it. Linshui City had over 200,000 players who had participated in the siege. Currently, more than half of them had perished. Over 100,000 players had been exiled to the 15th district. Seeing that there was no hope for victory, the players spontaneously went to the forums to protest, saying that the non-mainstream geography of their main city had affected the players' performance. However, the officials had yet to respond. Sword Demon and the others were now waiting for the end of the World War. They couldn't receive the news in-game, so they all stayed on the forums to watch the live streams. There were gossipy players in each of the major cities writing battle reports. Every main city was different, so it was interesting to watch. The next day, when Gu Fei logged on again, it was no longer the weekend. Naturally, there were fewer players during the day. At this time, 4/5 of the main city battles had ended. For example, Shady Forest City, Deepwater was already clamoring to treat everyone to a drink. Their city battles had gone quite smoothly. Although the points had not been tabulated yet, Deepwater was confident that they could enter the top 3. It's not over yet. In Little Ray's bar, Sword Demon and the others knocked on the table in loneliness. If they didn't receive the rewards for the city battles, they wouldn't have the energy to do anything else. Please have a taste of my newly developed wine. At this time, Xiaolei brought a few glasses of wine into the private room. Little Ray, what do you think? Sword Demon asked casually. After clearing the Han family young master and the people from Rosy Clouds out of the city, Little Ray's bar said that they would no longer be enemies with them. In the end, they really did so. The group of people from his guild who came later were all diligent in doing quests like Little Ray. They also occasionally encountered the very overpowered people from Amethyst and got along very peacefully. Me? Isn't it all because of you guys? Little Ray was full of smiles. Among the 3 guilds defending the city, not only did his guild not contribute to the victory, they were also the super enemy defending the city in the beginning. But in the end, they also got such an ending. Little Ray was gratified by his good luck. You're really lucky. Unscathed in battle looked at Little Ray with eyes full of jealousy. Thanks to everyone, today's wine is on me. Drink as much as you want. Little Ray, who had always been very shrewd in business, was also generous today. Then we won't be polite. Sword Demon smiled. Don't be polite, don't be polite. Little Ray put down the wine, and after saying goodbye, he went out. His guild's reward might not be lower than yours. Han family young master suddenly said after Little Ray went out. How could that be? They only gave some lousy quests. We led the defending side to the final victory. Yutian Xinming said. If there's no punishment for killing each other. Han family young master said. Sword Demon frowned. You mean when Little Ray's bar was our enemy at the beginning? That's right. We're all defending the city. If killing each other will deduct points, then you'll deduct a lot of points. Han family young master said. Then Little Ray's bar also has to deduct points. Sword Demon said. But you guys are still stronger. Han family young master said. That's a problem. Sword Demon nodded. Isn't it all because of you? Yutian Xinming stared at Han family young master. If you didn't cause so much trouble. Believe me. Han family young master nodded. I didn't think you guys could actually win the entire city war. I thought you guys would be killed by me. If there's really such a punishment, then we'll definitely deduct a lot of points. Although our points will definitely be more than Little Ray's bar. But Qianli's quest, he received it in the camp at the beginning. We don't know if that quest will be counted as the guild's city war points. That's definitely a super big head. If it doesn't count, then we don't seem to have anything special. Sword Demon said. Could it be that the reward of that super quest will all be concentrated on Qianli alone? Yutian Xinming murmured. Damn it. Unscathed in battle slammed the table. Jealousy made him a little crazy. If that quest wants to reward him alone, I think he'll have to level up 10 times. Everyone was silent. Where's Qianli? Yutian Xinming suddenly asked. Gu Fei was online, but he didn't come to the pub. He's probably going to do a wanted quest. Sword Demon said. This person, can't he be more promising? Everyone couldn't help but fall into silence again. Hey, Brother Yu is online. Yutian Xinming suddenly became excited. Brother Yu stayed on the forum, waiting to hear the first-hand news. If he's online, does it mean that the city war is completely over? Sure enough, as soon as Brother Yu got online, he immediately sent a message in the mercenary channel. The city war is over. Yutian Xinming, who was kicked out of the mercenary group, had also joined. Although they had established a guild, everyone was still used to communicating through the mercenary channel. Obviously, they were all the core members of the new guild. This mercenary channel naturally became the highest decision-making group. Can I receive the reward? As soon as Yutian Xinming asked this, the system broadcast had already started, announcing the complete end of the city war. The points were being calculated. After the players received the system message, the guild leader would go to the main city's discussion hall to receive the reward. The tavern, which had been very noisy just now, suddenly quietened down with this system notification. But in less than 3 seconds, there was a lot of scolding coming from outside. Sword Demon and the others could only smile bitterly in the private room. Obviously, for the guild players in Cloud City, this message was like rubbing salt on their wounds. Ding! A system notification sounded, and very overpowered players received this system message. Guild Very Overpowered has obtained 645 points in the City War of Cloud City. 645. That's it. Yutian Xinming's face was already filled with disappointment. Reborn Amethyst has more points than you. Unscathed in Battle was now mixed in with Reborn Amethyst, and received the system message from the other side. We have 1142 points, a lot more than you. It should be Qianli's quest. Sword Demon said. Not only that, didn't that guy also destroy their camp? Han family young master said. Yeah, that should be quite a lot. Sword Demon nodded. Actually, it's quite a lot. Brother Yu wasn't in the pub, so he could only ask about Amethyst's points in the channel. He began to analyze after learning about their points. The city war gives a total of 10,000 points. Our two guilds together have almost 2,000 points. I don't think this point is low. Maybe we can ask Deepwater, Old Cloud, and the others how many points they have. Sword Demon heard this and immediately sent a message to ask. In the end, Deepwater's Extreme Cold only obtained 312 points. Cloudy Twilight was the 10 Guilds Alliance, but this was their own organization. The system didn't recognize it, so the rewards were given to them. The guild that Cloudy Twilight was in charge of had 198 points, far less than Deepwater. However, there was one guild in the 10 guilds that had 542 points. It was this guild that completed the werewolf quest, allowing the players to receive help from the werewolf army. Deepwater, Cloudy Twilight, and the others were already very satisfied with these points. Getting more than 500 was considered a miracle. Obviously, they had many people to compare their points with. Compared to the other guilds, those that had more than 100 points were already considered to be somewhat powerful. Most of the second and third-rate guilds could only struggle with a few dozen points. The guilds that had single-digit points were actually the ones with the most points. It seems like our score is already very high. Sword Ghost told the others about the situation that he had asked. They were all level 6 guilds, so getting 200 or 300 points would be enough to make them die of joy. However, an extremely overpowered level 1 guild with 50 people had obtained more than 600 points. At this time, the cursing in the hall outside the room suddenly disappeared. The few of them were focused on the points and didn't have time to pay attention to it. Suddenly, they realized something was wrong. Just as they were feeling surprised, Little Ray suddenly ran in. How many points? Both sides asked in unison. 22 points, Little Ray said. The 4 people in the room looked at each other. It seemed like Han family young master's worries were a bit unnecessary. Little Ray's guild didn't have any outstanding contributions to the defense of the city. They only completed a few quests without any competition or hindrance. Clearly, his points were more normal. Everyone finally understood why Twilight Depths and the others would be so lucky if they got 200 to 300 points. How many points did you guys get? Little Ray asked again. Sword Demon was too kind. He was afraid that the number would provoke Little Ray. Very high, right? Little Ray prepared himself mentally. 30 times higher than you. Sword Demon felt that this was a bit more tactful. Amazing. Little Ray praised. He wasn't too surprised. He had already prepared himself mentally. Why is it suddenly so quiet outside? Han family young master asked Little Ray this question. Oh, I heard from the people outside that they just received a system notification. Although it wasn't points, it seems like the attacking side also received some sort of reward. Little Ray said. Reward for hard work. Han family young master nodded. It wasn't easy either. Yutian Shinming said this, but his eyes were full of schadenfreude. Let's stop chatting and go get our reward. Unscathed in battle stood up. What does it have to do with you? Yutian Shinming said with disdain. That's hard to say. Unscathed in battle's face was full of fascination. Actually, it's not hard to say. Do you know that it's a tragedy for you? Han family young master said. Huh? Didn't you hear? Although the attacking side lost, they still received a reward for hard work. Han family young master said. Unscathed in battle suddenly froze. City war was a guild activity. The reward was given to the individual according to the guild. Unscathed in battle joined the guild here after the city war ended. Actually, he was very clear that he definitely wouldn't receive any reward. However, he never thought that the attacking side would actually have a reward for hard work. Since he had already left the guild, it was also impossible for him to receive this reward. While he was petrified, a message suddenly arrived. Unscathed in battle opened it. It was his brothers from Warrior's Home who remembered him after receiving the system notification. They all sent congratulatory messages with ridicule. At the side, Yutian Shinming was also laughing like a madman. Unscathed in battle was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. You stay here. We're leaving. Yutian Shinming said goodbye to Unscathed in battle. He, Sword Demon, and Little Ray left the room together. Unscathed in battle, who was still in a stiff state, turned around to look. Han family young master stayed in the room and didn't move. Then he remembered that this guy also didn't receive any reward. Now that he had a companion, he suddenly felt a little better. Unscathed in battle clicked his tongue twice and sat down. He looked at Han family young master with a silly smile. Sword Demon and the others left the tavern and called for Gu Fei and the others. Gu Fei had already received July's summons and left for the city hall. In fact, he was still a little puzzled. This was a guild reward. The guild leader could just go and receive it. As for the individual reward, everyone would receive it separately. What was the point of greeting each other? The two sides met on the way. Gu Fei received information about Reborn Amethyst and had more than 1,000 points. At this time, when he saw Sword Demon, he asked him how much against the heavens he had. 645, Sword Demon told him. Only 600. So little. Gu Fei was surprised. Little Ray, who was at the side, had tears streaming down his face. That's not bad. Sword Demon told Gu Fei about depth of water, twilight in the clouds, and so on. I see. Gu Fei nodded. We really have an advantage because we have fewer people. All the points are piled up in our hands. They chatted along the way and arrived at the city hall of Cloud City. Unexpectedly, there were already quite a lot of people gathered here. The guild leader of the attacking side had already come to receive the reward. In addition, there were also some people watching the fun. In front of the city hall's door, the system had brushed a bright red carpet. A solemn and dignified NPC stood on it, with a large group of attendants behind him. At a glance, Gu Fei saw his guard leader standing behind this NPC like an ordinary soldier. Who is this? The players were discussing. It should be the lord of the city. Someone guessed. This answer was agreed by everyone. Every main city had a lord of the city, but he usually lived deep in the city hall building. Players could enter and leave the courtyard of the city hall at will, but the building was never allowed, so no one had ever seen the lord of the city. At this time, looking at this NPC's extravagance and style, this could only be a high-ranking official. Looking for the lord of the city to receive the reward? The players didn't get any clear hints and didn't know whether they should go forward. However, with the arrival of Gu Fei and the others, a considerable number of players began to focus their attention on them. This was the true winner of Cloud City, the true target of the reward given by the lord of the city. The players who came to receive the consolation prize were full of jealousy and hatred. But seeing Gu Fei walking in front with a sword on his shoulder, many people began to subconsciously avoid looking at him. You guys are here. July also appeared at this time. She arrived a little earlier than Gu Fei and the others. Can I receive it? Sword Demon asked July. He didn't say who to get it and how to get it. It seems like it's that one. July pointed at the lord of the city. Why doesn't anyone try? Sword Demon looked at the others. It seems like they are waiting for us to go first. July smiled bitterly. Then let's go. Sword Demon had experienced all kinds of situations. Being envied was actually a common occurrence for him. At this time, he calmly walked forward and stepped on the steps in front of the city hall. Under the gaze of many pairs of eyes, Sword Demon still couldn't think of any imposing dialogue to communicate with the NPC. A very heaven-defying warrior. In this battle to defend the main city, you have outstanding achievements and outstanding contributions. In order to defend your home, you have fought bloody battles and are not afraid of sacrifice. On behalf of the entire city, I express my sincere gratitude and highest salute to you. I have decided to reward you. When this NPC opened his mouth, his words were one after another, but in the ears of the players, the word, reward, was the most pleasing to the ears. With this, reward you, a white light suddenly appeared on Sword Demon's body. Who didn't recognize this white light? This was the white light of leveling up. The players were in an uproar. Obviously, the EXP reward had been released. Sword Demon directly leveled up, but they didn't know whether it was because he was not far from leveling up or because the EXP reward was too generous. After the white light flashed, the NPC raised his hand again and looked like he was giving orders. I will grant you 2 districts, Cloud and Cloud, as a reward for guarding your home. The players were in an uproar again. As expected, the reward for the division of forces appeared. He raised his hand and gave 2 districts. Usually, the players called the places by streets. There were indeed names of districts, but the players didn't remember them because the districts were too big. If you told people on a date that you would meet them in Cloud District, they would beat you to death. However, the reward didn't stop there. Then, the Castellan gave them financial and military support so that they could better defend their homes in the future. However, it was obviously inappropriate to give all of this to the guild leader. The Castellan announced the rewards in this area and finally told Sword Demon to let the guild members collect it themselves. EXP, territory, money, equipment, all the possible rewards in the game were given, and a bunch of guild leaders were extremely jealous. Chapter 772. However, this was not the end. The city lord was still going on and on, talking about things like guild points and guild reputation value. These things were very important to the big guilds. When they heard this, they couldn't stand it anymore. The rewards were endless. They really wanted to throw Sword Demon off the stage. Sword Demon, on the other hand, felt that it was a pity. The guild reputation that was given just now had allowed Amethyst to jump from a level 1 guild to a level 2 guild. However, Amethyst would have to merge with Reborn Amethyst. The levels wouldn't stack, so it was a waste of so many reputation points. The rewards for Amethyst finally came to an end. Sword Demon turned around and saw a bunch of players attacking the city. Their eyes were about to spit fire. They probably didn't want to listen to his acceptance speech, so he quietly retreated to the side. The next to go up was July. Reborn Amethyst's guild leader Gu Fei returned to her. After walking up to the stage, the Castellan said the same lines as when he praised Sword Demon. However, when the EXP reward was given out, there was no white light on July. July looked at the data. The EXP reward was not as exaggerated as she imagined. It was obvious that it varied from person to person. July did not stand out during the city war. Moreover, because she went outside the city with Brother Yu to recruit people, she missed many opportunities to do quests. However, the following division of forces set off another climax. Reborn Amethyst was even more valiant than Amethyst. They were rewarded with 4 districts. Sunset Cloud, Overlook Cloud, and Flowing Cloud. These 4 districts became the rewards for Reborn Amethyst. The districts of Cloud City were named after clouds. Then, the Castellan promised money, equipment, points, and reputation. The attacking players didn't know what was going on. Just from the rewards of the districts, it seemed that Reborn Amethyst would get twice as much as Amethyst. However, in reality, Amethyst City War rewards and Guild Reputation rewards were the only ones that were worth twice as much as the Guild War rewards. As for experience, money, equipment, and guild points, they were all personal and had no relation to the Guild War points. Sword Demon received more experience, money, and guild points than July. In addition, there was equipment. Sword Demon was admiring it at this time, but July didn't even get any equipment as a reward. Obviously, her contribution wasn't enough to satisfy the system. July also retreated quietly and looked at the equipment that Sword Demon was fiddling with. A belt. Sword Demon showed it to July and didn't think much of it. Although this belt was also an exquisite item, the Sword Demon was already fully equipped with exquisite equipment. Clearly, it was impossible for the system to give out such a heaven-defying equipment like the Night Streamer sword. Therefore, this new belt only gave Sword Demon an additional choice of equipment. It couldn't be considered a big improvement. At this time, Little Ray walked up to the stage as the winner of the third guild. Under the expectations of the crowd, he was very different. The city lord's words for his commendation were very frugal. He only expressed his gratitude, and didn't use any words like outstanding achievements or outstanding contributions. In the end, he didn't even mention the reward for the city and equipment. Clearly, Lay's guild didn't have the qualifications to receive these two things. The expressions of the attacking players instantly became much better. When Lil Ray crept down dejectedly, they were all smiling and pointing at him. It was common knowledge that there were only 3 guilds defending the city. The 3 guild leaders had already received their rewards. Next, it was time for the guild members to receive their individual rewards. Yutian Shinming was very proactive. Just as he was about to step forward, he saw the castellan suddenly walking on his own. The attacking players suddenly felt incredibly excited because they could tell that the city lord was walking towards them. This was a treatment that even Reincarnation Amethyst and Reincarnation Amethyst had never received before. Sword Demon and the others didn't think so because they knew that in terms of rewards, it was possible that Gu Fei alone was worth an entire guild. Gu Fei completed the mission that determined the outcome of the battle. Gu Fei took down a camp. Gu Fei killed countless people in the battle against the attacking players. Was the castellan coming down to give Gu Fei an award? That was what Sword Demon and the others thought. They thought that once the castellan turned around, the guild leaders who had rushed over to surround him would be embarrassed again. Who knew that this time, these guys had guessed correctly. The castellan had indeed come to them. However, what greeted them with a bunch of smiling faces was a bucket of cold water. You bunch of ruffians, I will let bygones be bygones and forgive your mistakes. I hope this can reform your cloudy hearts. You're on your own now. The castellan said disdainfully. With a wave of his sleeve, he turned around and left. The guild leaders were all stunned. The castellan didn't talk to any of them alone, nor did he give them any rewards. Did the system send them over just to listen to this lecture? The guild leaders were a little annoyed, but this was all caused by the system, so they couldn't vent their anger no matter what. The guild leaders all piled up a ball of fire in their chests, roasting themselves until their faces were red, but they couldn't vent their anger. Gu Fei and the others just thought that they were watching another show. After the castellan left, he immediately entered the political building. One of his attendants stood up and announced that the next reward would be received at the logistics department. Gu Fei, Sword Demon and the others couldn't help but look at Little Ray. If they remembered correctly, he was in the logistics department when he was in the camp battle mission. What about us? Are we going to get nothing? The guild leaders of the attacking side protested loudly. Although they knew that it was useless, they needed to vent at this time. Who would have thought that the follower would actually understand this question? His eyes turned and swept a contemptuous glance at the mob, coldly saying, "The same goes for all of you. Feel the magnanimity of the city lord." When the guild leaders heard this, it was obvious that there would still be rewards. They immediately showed their generosity. Who would go against a system NPC's mockery? However, since their rewards were only generosity, they didn't think that they would be on the same level as the reborn amethyst. They reckoned that they would be on the same level as Little Ray, who quietly took away the rewards without knowing anything. It wasn't exciting at all. Where was the logistics department? They just had to ask the NPCs in the political building to find out. Next was the individual reward. Sword Demon and July both sent messages to their guild members to receive their rewards. After the rewards were received, both sides would merge. July also told Sword Demon a very exciting news. In the guild reputation reward just now, the reborn amethyst had directly risen to level 4. This meant that after the merger, they would directly become a level 4 guild with a maximum of 500 members. Gu Fei was about to go to the logistics department to receive his reward, but when he turned around, he realized that everyone was staring at him, including the guild leaders of the 800 guild leaders. "What's going on?" Gu Fei said. "What do you think? Who wouldn't be curious about the rewards you'll receive?" Sword Demon said. They won't give you another equipment of a higher level, right? Yutian Xinming said. I don't think so. If the rewards are high, they could give me 2 or 3 pieces. They wouldn't give me equipment of a higher level, right? Sword Demon's analysis was very accurate. I'm already satisfied with a pair of rings like strange pupils, Gu Fei said. Shameless. They said in unison. Although accessories didn't have any requirements, it was still possible to deduce the equipment's level by looking at the ratio of the attributes. Strange Pupil's mana loop was definitely equipment of a higher level. Are those rings also of a higher level? Gu Fei obviously couldn't tell. Definitely. Sword Demon nodded confidently. That's a pity. Gu Fei sighed. As they spoke, they had already arrived at the logistics department of Cloud City. It was actually a storeroom on the side of the government building. There were guards in front of the door and a few NPCs in charge of the storeroom. It was obvious that they were ready to give out rewards to the players. When Gu Fei walked forward, the room instantly fell silent. Everyone put down their thoughts of receiving their rewards and stared at Gu Fei. Gu Fei walked forward and spoke to the NPC. Speaking was equivalent to verifying their identity. In that instant, all the rewards that should be given out were given out. A white light flashed. As expected. Everyone was thinking in their hearts. However, this white light wasn't over yet. Another white light followed. Everyone's jaws dropped. This guy actually leveled up twice in a row. Before they could even think about it, the NPC handed over a bag of money and a blue hat. What's this? Sword Demon and the other acquaintances naturally went up to it. Magic hat. The additional attributes were 10% maximum mana, 10 points of intelligence, and 5% spell damage. This attribute. July didn't say it out loud. This attribute was superb, but she felt that it was seriously inconsistent with Gu Fei's achievements. But it's really sharp. Yutian Xinming exclaimed. In terms of height, this hat is of a higher level. Sword Demon also exclaimed. The magic hat in Gu Fei's hand was conical and seemed to be at least 30 centimeters tall. Try it on. Yutian Xinming said. Thus, Gu Fei put it on and tried it. Immediately, over 800 people laughed. Gu Fei was embarrassed and quickly took it off, but his image was clearly fixed at that moment. The 800 people were still laughing wildly. Gu Fei wouldn't attack people because of this, but he could still threaten them. Gu Fei was now gradually adapting to his image in the minds of the players. He fiercely glared back at the 800 people. The 800 people immediately quieted down. Regardless of whether they were afraid or not, offending Qianli and getting drunk was definitely not a good thing. Gu Fei held the hat in his hand and didn't know what to do with it. Yutian Xinming suddenly remembered something. What hat are you wearing now? Gu Fei's current equipment, excluding the hat, was already the best on him, but the Night Streamer sword and the Night Spirit robe were too eye-catching. These people who were familiar with Gu Fei automatically ignored the other equipment on him. Yutian Xinming thought about it and realized that he didn't know what equipment Gu Fei had on his head. On my head? I use this when I need it. Gu Fei took out a piece of cloth from his pocket. Yutian Xinming looked at it and saw that it was an assassin's mask. He was so angry that he trembled. This was the scum of the mages. At this moment, a guild leader with good eyesight came out. For example, against the current. What's wrong, Qianli, you don't seem satisfied with this equipment. Against the current greeted Gu Fei as if they were very close. Look at this. Gu Fei held the tip of the hat for Against the Current to see. Against the Current was anxious. Who wanted to see the appearance? He wanted to see the attributes. He was too impatient. Gu Fei wasn't stupid enough to just show him the appearance. He already showed the attributes. Oh. The players who were looking at this side let out a long sigh, then heaved a sigh of relief. The hat was good, but it wasn't overpowered. Everyone present was a guild leader and most of them had good equipment. For example, against the current. After seeing it, he wasn't jealous at all. The attributes of the headband he was currently using for mages were even stronger than this. It added 12 points to intelligence and 8% mana output. As for the 10% maximum mana, this attribute wasn't enough to make mages jealous. Most mages had enough mana, so 10% more or less didn't matter. However, priests might prefer this attribute. They used up their mana faster, so they would use up as much as they could. This was a guarantee of endurance. Against the current looked at the attributes and commented casually. Gu Fei was very interested and turned to ask Sword Demon and Yutian Xinming, I also think this hat is more suitable for Gongzi. You just think it's ugly, so you want to disgust him, right? Sword Demon saw through Gu Fei. Hee hee. Gu Fei just laughed. How much experience did you get? Sword Demon started to discuss this with him. Leveling up was leveling up, but missing 1 point of experience was leveling up, missing 1 million, gaining 1 million was also leveling up. However, at least Gu Fei went straight from level 42 to level 43 without any carelessness in the middle. Sword Demon was already sure that Gu Fei got more experience than him. As a result, Gu Fei calculated the number. It was more than twice as much as Sword Demon. Gu Fei did kill a lot of players. The other guild leaders found that the equipment rewarded by Gu Fei was only SOSO, and they felt much better. At this time, they also rushed up to receive their rewards. However, after receiving them, they found that their evaluation of Qianli's reward as SOSO was too pretentious. Their reward was just some experience and a few gold coins. It was like dismissing beggars. Not to mention equipment, they didn't even have guild points and reputation. The logistics NPC even said it. The fact that they didn't deduct guild points and reputation for what they did was already magnanimous of the city lord. The reward they received was incomparable to that of Qianli's. However, there were also players who suddenly flashed white light after receiving the reward, but after asking, it was known that they were not far from leveling up. Everyone's experience reward was almost the same. The city lord treated everyone equally and comforted them. Obviously, their contribution in the city war was destruction in the eyes of the city lord, so it was reasonable not to reward them based on that. At this time, other players also came to receive their rewards. After that, the shout from the follower was actually a system message, telling everyone who could receive the reward to come to the logistics department. Cloud City's discussion hall had never been so lively. Fortunately, now that the city war was over, more than 200,000 people from the 800 guilds were not all online. Even if they were online, after hearing that the reward was just a little money and a little experience, they were not in a hurry. Those who were far away all said that they would wait until they passed by. Anyway, the system did not announce the time. On the other hand, the very overpowered and reincarnated amethyst people were all alive. They had been looking forward to all these rewards for a long time. Moreover, they had to quickly receive the reward and merge. When Gu Fei's group received the reward and left, they met some people on their side. For example, Drifting. The 3 people just came out of the discussion hall and saw Gu Fei. They hurriedly greeted him. What did the faction reward you? Faction reward? Gu Fei was startled. Yes, you haven't received it yet? Drifting asked. Gu Fei and Sword Demon looked at each other. Yes. Both of them had received some quests from the faction. Sword Demon didn't continue, but Gu Fei's side was amazing. The quest continued and directly destroyed 5 camps of the attackers. Sword Demon had long felt that a magic hat didn't match the great things that Gu Fei had done. Now it seemed that Gu Fei's reward had to be received at the faction. Go! The others were even more excited than Gu Fei. So Gu Fei went, and the excited people found that they couldn't follow him. The discussion hall didn't allow ordinary players to enter. Although Sword Demon was also in the faction, his assassin league wasn't in the light. It was different from this glamorous government agency. Drifting and the other 2 had already run to the logistics area to receive the reward. They didn't follow. In fact, even if they followed, they couldn't see. They were not in the same department as Gu Fei and couldn't enter the guard room. In the guard room, Gu Fei pushed open the door and entered the room. Everything was the same as before, but the captain was obviously more enthusiastic when he saw him. He took the initiative to walk over from behind the desk, took Gu Fei's hand, and shook it. The other NPCs also looked at Gu Fei with admiration. "Qianli, it's all thanks to you this time," said the captain. Gu Fei nodded, not being modest. "You made a great contribution. The mayor said that he wants to meet you personally," said the captain. "Oh. Where to?" asked Gu Fei. "Follow me." The captain led Gu Fei out the door. It seemed like his reward was still going to be given by the mayor. The mayor was indeed the one from before, and the place where the mayor stayed was no longer an office, but a hall. The ring-shaped hall had a roof supported by a circle of pillars. In such a large room, only the city lord had a table and a chair. The other guards and attendants were all standing. The city lord's treatment was indeed extraordinary. "Qianli, come in to see the mayor." The captain bowed to the mayor. Gu Fei didn't care and just stood there. The mayor nodded, turned around from behind the table, and began to sing again. He didn't expect it to be the same thing outside the building, but the reward had changed from a guild to an individual. After a bunch of words, the mayor finally waved his hand. "A loyal warrior must be rewarded." Then there was a system prompt. Gu Fei's wanted license had risen by 2 levels. "Is it really a faction reward?" Gu Fei muttered. Chapter 773. From the looks of it, Gu Fei's faction was part of the city government's guard. He was a civil servant, and the wanted license was proof of his identity. The reward given to him by the faction was actually based on the wanted license, which made Gu Fei very disappointed. Although he was not particular about the person, Gu Fei felt that a new piece of equipment or a new skill would be more exciting. He took out the wanted license from his pocket and looked at it. It had been upgraded twice in a row, and the grade was indeed different. At the very least, it was heavier. Looking closely, the original hardcover book was now completely made of metal. The words and patterns on each page were so concave and convex, and the cover and back cover were polished to be as smooth as a mirror. They could even reflect light when exposed to the sun. "This can't be one of the rewards, right?" Gu Fei sweated. The appearance of the wanted license had changed greatly. If this was a reward for leveling up, the system was too shameless. Fortunately, the system still cared about face. The change in appearance was just a side effect of leveling up the wanted license. The real reward for leveling up was the search function. This was what Gu Fei had dreamed of when he was hunting down Jiannan and the others. But if it was a normal wanted mission? Normal wanted missions were not bad either. From now on, he could directly search for experts on the leaderboard if they had committed a PK crime. Thinking of this, Gu Fei nodded. He was very satisfied with this reward. The second reward was that when he was in the city, he could show the wanted license to the guards and temporarily recruit guards to assist in the wanted mission. His current level allowed him to mobilize 2 ordinary guards. This function was looked down upon by Gu Fei. He was usually afraid that people would snatch his kills, and now the reward was to give him helpers. How unnecessary was this? This reward made Gu Fei very unhappy, and he left the guard room with a stomach full of complaints. Outside the municipal building, Sword Demon and the others were still standing there. Moreover, they were not the only ones. Those who came later to claim their rewards, such as Jian Nan Yu and the others, as well as some of the guild leaders who had been magnanimous by the city lord, heard that 1,000 miles drunk would go in to claim even more awesome rewards. They all stopped and waited anxiously like parents waiting outside the college entrance examination. Gu Fei finally came out. Everyone's eyes widened as they appraised Gu Fei from head to toe. Failed. Many people who tried to appraise Gu Fei failed. Gu Fei was currently at level 43, surpassing the mainstream level of 41 and 42. The poor Cloud City player's EXP reward was not enough to complete such a huge leap in level. What exactly is the reward? Hurry and hand it over. Slim Waist Dance was also one of the people outside the door. She was one of the people who used appraisal art, and she was one of the people who could not be identified. She was still at level 42. Although the EXP reward for the winning side was higher than that of the losing side, compared to Gu Feijian's Phantom Sword, there was a huge difference. In fact, the difference between Gu Fei and the Sword Demon was like the difference between clouds and mud. However, Gu Fei's level was one level lower than the top experts. So, after receiving the EXP reward, he was considered to be on the same level as these top experts. However, Sword Demon, who also had the experience award, was still above Gu Fei. At times like this, Brother Yu would jump up and down, sometimes in the game, and sometimes in the forum. He had just brought news that as the players received their rewards for the city war, the top 5, top 10, and top 7 rankings in the game had undergone earth-shattering changes. Currently, the Sword Ghost and Gu Fei were ranked first and second in the parallel world level rankings, and the rankings behind them were constantly being refreshed. The players who completed the difficult quests were rewarded handsomely in this city war. Brother Yu said. For example, in Moonlit Night City, the player who completed the werewolf quest in the 10 Guild Alliance had already surpassed one of the original top 5, the big brother of the 10 Guild Alliance, Yun Zhongmu. In fact, during the city war, the guild leaders mostly played the role of a commander. The commander could not be evaluated by the system, so when it came to rewards, the guild leaders' rewards were not outstanding. However, the guild territory rewards and reputation rewards were basically for the guild leaders, so the guild leaders did not care about these things at all. Other than Sword Demon and Qianli, who are the other 3 new top 5? Someone asked Brother Yu. I'm not sure yet. They will be rewarded one by one. When the rewards are all collected, it will be about time. I will also collect my reward first. Brother Yu replied. He paused his tracking report and ran to collect his reward. Gu Fei walked out of the municipal building. When he saw so many people staring at him, and Slender Waist Dance shouting at him, he immediately understood. When he saw that the people in front of him were all experts, he was very pleased. He raised his wanted license and announced, "Experts, be careful. In the future, when I do wanted missions, I can directly search your name. Experts have priority." What? The guild leaders did not react for a moment. Thus, Gu Fei patiently explained the function of his wanted license again. Instantly, everyone's face turned green. Slender Waist Dance said angrily, "You dare to collect me?" Gu Fei was stunned. Before he could think, Slender Waist Dance had already come over and pinched him. "You dare to hesitate? I won't search you, I won't search you." Gu Fei smiled helplessly. "That's more like it." Slender Waist Dance nodded in satisfaction. With her tough personality, it was normal for her to be tainted with PK points. If she was really targeted by this person, she would spend half of her gaming life in jail. After Slender Waist Dance succeeded, Yutian Xinming and the others also said, "Qianli, of course you're not the kind of person who values love over friendship, right?" In fact, everyone thought that no matter how much Gu Fei loved wanted missions, he would at least give face to his close friends. However, at this time, these people still came to confirm, which made Gu Fei very puzzled. Was he that unreasonable? However, as he spoke, he suddenly understood from their expressions that they weren't trying to confirm it. Instead, they were trying to show off to the guild leaders and experts who had already turned ashen from shock. "Look, you'll be chased by Qianli drunk when you have PK in the future, but we're Qianli drunk brothers, so it's fine." The group of old friends led by Yutian Xinming all thought the same. Only the honest Sword Demon did not join in the fun. Gu Fei was very depressed, but the other guild leaders could not miss this opportunity. Taking advantage of the fact that Qianli drunk was right in front of them, they suddenly exploded and swarmed him with extreme enthusiasm. "Brother Qianli, this Against the Current felt that he had some friendship with Gu Fei, so he should be able to stop Gu Fei from searching Against the Current. However, he had just said 6 words when a violent guy came out of nowhere and pushed Against the Current aside. Against the Current was furious, but when he turned around to look, he saw that there were a bunch of strong guys around him. He didn't know which one of them was the culprit. He saw this group of warrior guild leaders taking advantage of their strength and rushing to Gu Fei's side. They kept shouting, "Boss 1,000 miles, I'm Triple X from Triple X Guild. Can you give me some face and not search my name? If you have any conditions, just name them." Of course, most of them did not know or have any friendship with Gu Fei. They could only hurriedly introduce themselves and promise great benefits. At first, most of them were like this brother, writing a check for Gu Fei to fill. However, as more and more people like this appeared, the checks were suspected to be empty checks. Therefore, some people began to shout out the exact rewards. Later, there were people who waved their money bags and immediately promised to pay. Moreover, many guild leaders were no longer just thinking for themselves. Just now, there was a person who waved a large piece of paper and said that he hoped that Qianli Drunk would give him some face and that they could buy out all the names listed on it. Against the Current originally thought that he had the highest chance of being pardoned by Gu Fei, but he did not expect this situation to develop. Now, those who could get close to Gu Fei were all people with strength. A mage like Against the Current was already lucky that he had not been trampled on. Looking left and right, the guild leaders who were also powerless like him had all been farmed out of the circle. They even had to guess where Qianli Drunk was. Against the Current was furious. He hurriedly sent out a message to gather the most powerful people in his guild to force a way out for himself. Against the Current wasn't the only one who called for help. With the spread of the news, more and more players rushed over to ask for pardons. The warrior guild leaders at the front naturally did not dare to offend Gu Fei. At first, they acted as a human wall, but as the push grew, they could not hold on any longer. They hurriedly shouted at Gu Fei, "Boss Qianli, we can't hold on anymore. We can't hold on any longer. Run." Gu Fei saw that the situation was completely out of control. He did not know where his friends had gone. There were people in all directions. Where could he run to? Kill his way out. They were not here to cause trouble, but to curry favor with him. He really could not do something like killing his way out. He could only teleport. Gu Fei was about to take out a teleportation scroll when he suddenly received a message. He opened it and saw that it was drifting. "Enter the building, idiot." Gu Fei came to a sudden realization. He hurriedly turned around and pushed open the door of the municipal building behind him. It was also at this moment that the row of warrior guild leaders who were holding hands to protect Gu Fei finally couldn't hold on any longer. With a loud smacking sound, 3 of them saw that Gu Fei had been too relaxed after dodging the crowd. They suddenly stopped resisting and were directly knocked to the ground. Then, the crowd surged forward, trampled, white light. 3 strong warrior guild leaders were actually trampled to death just like that. Gu Fei did not know about this. He pushed open the door and rushed in. The door then closed automatically. The door opened with a casual push from Gu Fei, but the players behind him were pushed against the door like pancakes by the crowd. The door did not budge at all. A few of them were pushed to the ground like they were being trampled. They all shouted at the top of their lungs, "Stop squeezing, you're going to die." Their words were useless. They still squeezed. Fortunately, someone was quick-witted and shouted, "Qianli Drunk left, stop squeezing." Although the players might not believe it, they still had to take a look. Sure enough, the black-robed mage was no longer in front of the building. Slowly, the crowd began to calm down. The guild leaders were activating their intelligence network. No matter what, they had to contact Qianli Drunk to negotiate with him. It was calm for less than a minute. Suddenly, someone pointed. "Qianli Drunk is over there." Everyone turned around and saw Gu Fei's figure appear behind a window in the hall. He had even pulled open another window. "Hey, can't you be a little more quiet?" Drifting sighed and sent a message to Gu Fei. He quickly moved to the side. Then he saw the crowd rush to the small window. Even the ticket window during the spring festival would be shameful compared to this scene. Don't push, don't push. You can't get through the window. The tragedy repeated itself. The players in the front row shouted again. But this time, Gu Fei hid behind the window. The players could not reach him, so he had a chance to speak. He shouted, "Quiet, quiet, listen to me. Quiet, all of you. Boss Qianli is going to speak. Do you hear me?" Hearing Gu Fei's words, the players in the front row immediately tried to curry favor with Gu Fei by conveying the message. Their usual pretentious attitude as a guild leader was completely gone. With a single sentence from Gu Fei, they became more obedient. The crowd quieted down again. When Gu Fei saw that it was almost quiet, he stuffed his head in the window and shouted, "Everyone, listen to me." Everyone was excited. As long as Qianli was drunk and willing to speak, then any conditions could be discussed. Look, there are only so many players who can be considered experts. All of them want me to let them go. Brothers, who do you want me to put a bounty on? Gu Fei shouted. Put a bounty on anyone, as long as it's not me. Boss Qianli, this is our guild's name list. The guild leader in front of the window had been squeezed into a pancake. When he heard Gu Fei's words, he struggled to shove the name list in his hand into the window. But the player next to him was quick. He snatched the name list and threw it away. He was a selfish guy. He just kept poking his head out of the window and said, "Boss Qianli, I'm not as greedy as him. Just recognize me and don't put a bounty on me. My name is..." Fuck off. A third person pounced on him. He pushed the first one to the side and struggled in front of the window. If you really don't want to be a bounty on you, there's actually a way. Gu Fei said. This time, Gu Fei didn't shout. But strangely, it seemed like everyone heard him. The crowd quieted down. Those who didn't hear clearly only dared to ask quietly, "What did he say?" "There's a way." He said there's a way, right? Yes, there's a way. He said it. The players who heard clearly became excited again. The way is to stop when it's appropriate. Gu Fei said. Stop when it's appropriate. Everyone was stunned. Then, someone laughed and said, "Boss Qianli, is there a need for that? We all admit that we aren't your opponent. You killed 1,000 of Singing to Wine's players. How could we dare to challenge you? Now, we've all been stopped when it's appropriate. We've all lost." Yes, yes. We've all lost. Everyone said. Only the Singing to Wine's players who were used as an example were angry. They really wanted to jump out and explain that they hadn't been killed. Everyone has misunderstood. Gu Fei hurriedly said, "What I mean is, when everyone PK, stop when it's appropriate. Only then will you not get PK points. If you don't get PK points, of course, you won't be wanted by me. Am I right?" Many players wanted to curse, but they all held it in. What kind of stupid method was this? Stop when it's appropriate. Would that still be considered PK? Like in previous online games, where they would plant flags and learn from each other? But the problem was that the parallel world didn't provide this function. Even if it did, our two guilds were going to fight. We can't just plant flags one-on-one, right? How could we bully the other with numbers? Gu Fei's method obviously didn't receive the approval of the players. As guild players, in their minds, PK was never a one-on-one fight. It was a group fight. How could there be a limit to a group fight? Never heard of it, that's it. Everyone, take care. Gu Fei said the last sentence and slammed the window shut. The players hadn't recovered yet. When they saw Qianli leave drunk, they immediately started howling again. But this time, Gu Fei didn't show up. He only sent a message to Drifting, "What's the use of entering? We still have to rely on teleportation." The players blocked the municipal building like they were petitioning and refused to leave. In the end, Gu Fei used a teleportation scroll and left. Luckily, there were still plenty of scrolls after the city war. If there wasn't even one, it would be really difficult. Sword Demon and the other veterans didn't expect something like this to happen. This was absolutely unprecedented because there had never been such an overpowered expert in any online game. Brother, you couldn't help but exclaim in the channel, "It can't be. Could it be that our Cloud City will be purified into a PvE-only city because of Qianli's drunkenness? It's possible that it will be purified into a ghost city, right? If we can't PK, then the game will lose a lot of fun. Just this point alone will probably drive away a lot of players, right? Our Cloud City won't have anyone." Yutian Xinming said. "Drive away? Where?" Gu Fei asked. "Other cities." Yutian Xinming said. "My bounty license can't only be used in Cloud City." Gu Fei said. "Are you serious or are you joking?" Yutian Xinming asked. "Joking? What joke? I can use it anywhere. I dealt with Fire Burning Cloak in Fog City. Did you guys forget?" Gu Fei said. "Ahem, let's talk about this. Even though it's quite funny, as an expert that often gets involved in PK, the pressure is really great. I just want to say one thing." Unscathed in Battle said. "What?" "Qianli, it's great that I got to know you so early." Unscathed in Battle said. "You're disgusting." The people of Department 1 vomited. "Is there a problem with what I'm doing?" Gu Fei asked. "No problem." Han Family Young Master said. "You're saying that because you've never had PK points, right?" Everyone looked at him with disdain. Put yourself in his shoes. If we didn't know Qianli and he used his license to put us on the wanted list, it would be quite painful. Sword Demon said. "Brother Qianli, I finally found you." As the few of them were discussing, Gu Fei was suddenly blocked by a group of people. Looking up, he saw a sword of no oath and against the current. The two of them were together again. "Hello." Gu Fei greeted the two. "About the wanted list, we'd like to talk to Brother Qianli again. How about we find a place to sit down?" Unsworn Sword suggested. Originally, they had added Gu Fei as friends, but Gu Fei had the foresight to close the private chat after teleporting out of the hall. They couldn't contact Unsworn Sword, so they could only search around the city. Who knew that their luck would be good this time, and they quickly found him. Of course, it wasn't without flaws. This guy, against the current, also suddenly appeared. Chapter 774. My Two Bosses. Gu Fei was troubled when he saw Unsworn Sword and Against the Current. These two brothers weren't strangers anymore. If it was anything else, he would have given them face, but today's matter would affect his pursuit. Although players weren't on the same level as him, they were at least stronger than NPCs in the wild. No matter how high the level of a wild monster was, once you were familiar with it, it was boring. Players might not be able to kill in one hit, but there would always be different details in every kill. That was what made it fun. As for these two in front of him, Gu Fei believed that they wouldn't just ask for a safe sign for himself. They would definitely consider the whole of their guild. As guilds that were obviously stronger in Cloud City, these two included the majority of the experts in Cloud City. Promising to let their people go. That was too much of a sacrifice. There was something that Gu Fei was too embarrassed to say. In front of the administration building, some people really thought too highly of themselves. Gu Fei's words were quite clear from the start. Experts, be careful. This was the function of the bounty license. Gu Fei was prepared to use it to compete with the expert players, but in the end, it caused everyone to be in danger. In fact, in those small guilds, who could be called an expert? Even their guild leader might not be that good. These people were really worrying too much. Brother Qianli, let's talk. Give me some face. Unsworn Sword and Against the Current looked a little pitiful. Gu Fei's heart softened. In the end, he still nodded. In his heart, he was thinking about how to reject these two guys' request. Favors were really troublesome, especially since this matter wasn't a big deal to Gu Fei. It was just an entertainment activity. It really wasn't good to reject them righteously. Let's go to Little Ray's bar. It's not far. Brother Qianli is also very familiar with it, Against the Current suggested. Gu Fei nodded. He was going to Little Ray's bar to meet up with his old friends. This saved him a lot of trouble. For the first time, Unsworn Sword and Against the Current didn't bring any brothers with them. It seemed like they wanted to express their sincerity. However, Gu Fei's eyes were sharp, and he had a murderous aura. He had long since noticed that there were people peeping from both sides of the street. One side was raining, and the other side was drinking and singing. At this time, they cooperated with their guild leader and pretended to be passers-by. Gu Fei feigned ignorance. The three of them walked side by side to Xiaolei's tavern. Unsworn Sword and Against the Current acted like the hosts, one leading the way to find a seat, while the other went straight to Xiaolei for a drink. Unsworn Sword led Gu Fei to a private room and sat down. Against the Flow had already entered with a tray of wine. Please. Unsworn Sword poured a glass for Gu Fei and ignored Against the Current. At this moment, he actually hoped that Against the Current could roll to the side. So, he sat on the side of the sofa without moving, not giving way to Against the Current. On the other hand, Gu Fei was kind. He took the initiative to move in and let Against the Current sit on his side. Unsworn Sword immediately regretted it. Why was Qianli such a kind person when he was drunk? Why didn't I know? Naturally, the three of them raised their glasses to each other. After putting down their glasses, Gu Fei took the initiative to speak. Gu Fei, a martial arts expert, was well versed in predicting the enemy's movements and taking the initiative to strike first. My two brothers, I know why you are here, but this matter is a little too difficult for me. To be honest, my goal in this game is a little different from yours. Equipment, quests, and so on are not important, but this opportunity to compete with others is the most I don't want to miss. But I can't just go on the streets and kill people, right? So, the only way is to complete a bounty quest. In the past, the PK points were just randomly collected. 8 out of 10 people couldn't even withstand a single blow. But now, with this bounty license, I can challenge experts every day. This is something I really don't want to miss. Gu Fei spoke the truth, his tone sincere and serious. However, Sword of the Unsworn and Against the Current were both complaining when they heard this. As expected of a PK maniac. I was right about this. Unsworn Sword thought. Equipment is nothing. If you have the guts, give me your dark streamer and robe. Against the Current thought. So, no matter what request you two have, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for me to accept. Gu Fei concluded. He felt that he had already sealed off all the words he wanted to say. Unsworn Sword and Against the Current looked at each other. Unsworn Sword said, "What do you mean?" "What do you mean?" Against the Current asked. "I mean, shouldn't you leave first?" Unsworn Sword said. "Why should I leave first and not you?" Against the Current was unconvinced. "Because you're closer to the door." Unsworn Sword said. "Idiot." Against the Current cursed, but he still got up and left the room. Although these two guys came together, they seemed to have their own plans. They didn't want to mix with the other party at all. Against the Current walked out of the room. Gu Fei respectfully waited for Unsworn Sword to speak. Unexpectedly, this guy suddenly punched the wall of the room beside him. This room was completely made by Little Ray, so it wasn't very sturdy. This punch almost flipped it over. Then he heard Unsworn Sword yell, "Don't lie outside and eavesdrop. I can smell your stench. Fuck you." Against the Current's voice was indeed separated by a wall. This guy wanted to hear what Unsworn Sword was planning, and then listen to Gu Fei's reaction. He didn't expect to be seen through, so he could only walk away resentfully. Guild leader Unsworn, if you have something to say, just say it. Gu Fei smiled. These two guild leaders were really noisy. Unsworn Sword also pondered for a long time, then said, after hearing Brother Qianli's words, I'm too embarrassed to say my original plan. I only have one last request. I hope that Brother Qianli will give me some face no matter what. What is it? Gu Fei asked. He thought to himself, this guy isn't asking me to let him go, is he? If that's the case, then he really deserves to be looked down on. From now on, I'll search Unsworn Sword every day. If there are people in our guild who cause trouble and get involved in PvP, I can't be bothered to care about them. But sometimes, as a guild, we have to fight with other guilds. At times like this, I hope that Brother Qianli can let our guild brothers go. Unsworn Sword finally voiced his request. When Gu Fei heard this, he quickly thought about it. During a team battle, there were a lot of PvP. It was a great opportunity for Gu Fei to launch a bounty. However, now that Unsworn Sword wanted Gu Fei to give up this big cake, he was a little reluctant. Generally, this kind of team battle won't happen without warning. When the time comes, I'll send Brother Qianli a message in advance, and you'll give us a short period of immunity. Once the battle is over, we'll immediately clean up the PvP. We definitely won't interfere with Brother Qianli's entertainment. What do you think? Unsworn Sword said. This, of course, we won't trouble Brother Qianli for nothing. Every time there's an event, we'll first send a reward. As long as Brother Qianli agrees, we can discuss the price. Unsworn Sword didn't make empty promises. He promised Gu Fei a huge profit. Gu Fei was speechless for a long time. In the end, he let out a deep sigh. I think I'll still have to reject you. Gu Fei said. Why? Unsworn Sword had been enjoying the changes in Gu Fei's expression. He originally thought that there was a lot of hope. I don't want my activities to be restricted. I didn't give you any face, so you don't have to show me any mercy. In fact, I can already foresee you guys being wanted. Experts, especially those high on the leaderboards, will become my priority targets. For example, Brother Unsworn, if you have PK points, you can immediately be careful. Gu Fei said. Wow, Brother Qianli, you won't be so heartless that you won't even let me go, right? Unsworn Sword laughed. He realized that there was no hope, so he wanted to make a joke to gain some special status for himself. That's hard to say. It's always better to be careful. Gu Fei said. Unsworn Sword's face was a bit green, but he still squeezed out a smile. However, he didn't give up. There had to be a way to move him. Unsworn Sword thought this way, but it seemed like there was no hope for him in the first round. Unsworn Sword was quite unwilling, but he still sent a message to Countercurrent. Hey, it's your turn. How are you? Countercurrent, who was waiting outside, replied to Unsworn Sword as he walked over. Not a chance. Unsworn Sword purposely destroyed Countercurrent's confidence. Then I'll have to congratulate you. Unsworn Sword failed. Countercurrent was obviously happy, so he opened the curtain and entered the room. Unsworn Sword took the initiative this time, shrinking back to give way to Countercurrent. However, Countercurrent didn't appreciate it this time and stared at him fiercely. However, Unsworn Sword's skin was also one of the thickest in Cloud City. He pretended to ignore it and calmly sat in his seat, drinking his wine. Shameless, do you think you know how to stealth? Countercurrent said. What, can't I sit for a while? Unsworn Sword showed off his shamelessness. Get out! Countercurrent roared. Unsworn Sword helplessly got up and patted Countercurrent's shoulder before he left. Then I'll congratulate you in advance. The two of them had a message conversation before, so Upstream knew very well what this, congratulations, meant. This was a blatant curse, but he was not in the mood to care about it. He watched as the Sword of No Oath left the door, and then watched as he completely left. Only then did Upstream return to his seat. Gu Fei had a helpless expression on his face. No matter what the other said, he wasn't going to listen. He had to treat everyone equally. Both Unsworn Sword and Countercurrent were his important customers, so he couldn't favor one and discriminate against the other. As for Against the Current, his observation skills were much better than Unsworn Sword's. Looking at Gu Fei's expression, he was probably waiting for him to reject him the moment he opened his mouth. Countercurrent didn't think that the words he prepared were smart, but looking at Gu Fei's expression, he didn't want to embarrass himself. This guy's thoughts moved very quickly. Without saying anything, he directly jumped his mentality to the last step of the Sword of No Oath just now. Unfortunately, this guy had the same thoughts as the hateful Unsworn Sword. There's still a long way to go. I'll slowly build a good relationship with Qianli and then work hard. If I can be as close to him as Sword Demon and his gang, won't he also go easy on me? Countercurrent thought like this and didn't rush to speak. He just looked at Gu Fei and smiled. Gu Fei was scared and asked in confusion, "Don't you have anything to say, Guild Master Countercurrent?" "Nope, what's there to say? We can't stop Brother Qianli from finding the fun in the game," Countercurrent said. "Oh." Gu Fei was surprised. "Then you're here for, haha, I met that Unsworn Sword guy on the way, so I decided to follow him to take a look. You know, we've always been competitors with them, so I have to pay attention to them." Against the Current quickly used the Sword of No Oath as a spear. "Oh. Then what did you see?" Gu Fei asked. From the looks of it, it seems like his wishful thinking has failed. If he can really get Brother Qianli to give him face, then we'll be in big trouble. If that's the case, I'll have to be thick-skinned and ask Brother Qianli to give us the same treatment, Countercurrent said. Gu Fei laughed when he heard this. "Of course I'll treat everyone the same, don't worry." Countercurrent looked very happy when he heard this. He simply stood up and said, "Then I'll take my leave first. Let's get together again if there's a chance. I have some mage stuff that I really want to discuss with Brother Qianli, but I haven't had the chance." Countercurrent used the convenience of their classes to find a chance to establish a friendship with Gu Fei. Gu Fei smiled. "Take care, Guild Master Countercurrent. Be careful when you have PK points." Countercurrent paused for a moment, then understood Gu Fei's meaning. His expression didn't change, but he continued to chuckle in his heart. Of course, of course." Watching Countercurrent leave, Gu Fei let out a long sigh of relief. Then, without batting an eyelid, he quietly walked to the door of the private room next door and suddenly barged in. The 5 people in the private room were all glued to the partition. Brother Yu, Yutian Shinming, and Unscathed in Battle each had a wine glass and were leaning against the partition to listen. Sword Demon and Han family young master weren't as wretched and impatient as the other 3, but their attention was clearly on the other side. But as soon as Gu Fei barged in, the 2 of them noticed. The Sword Ghost immediately grew embarrassed, while the Han clan's young master's expression was the same as ever. He calmly sat down, as if nothing had happened. "Coming. Coming." Gu Fei knocked on the table. The 3 guys were still lying there listening. The 3 guys turned around and saw Gu Fei. They said in unison, "It's over. It's over." Gu Fei nodded. "Huh. Brother, you didn't believe it. Countercurrent really left just like that? This guy, could it be that what he said was true? How is that possible? He's retreating in order to advance." At this time, those who are still in a hurry to talk to him about this are all idiots. Slowly build up friendship, cultivate feelings, and when the time comes, the crisis will naturally be resolved. Han family young master said. Countercurrent scheming is indeed deeper than Unsworn Swords. Brother, you sighed. But being too scheming isn't a good thing. Look, our hero Qianli is now obviously disgusted by Countercurrent. Unsworn Sword said what he wanted to say, but he still took the lead. Han family young master said. Hero Qianli, what exactly are you thinking? Yutian Shinming pretended to be interviewing. I'll do whatever I want. What's there to think about? Gu Fei didn't take this as a problem at all. Free and easy, really free and easy. Yu Tian Xinming said. That's why I said, it's great to know Qianli. Unscathed in battle came again. That's enough. Gu Fei also pulled a long face. Unscathed in battle immediately shut his mouth and shrank into a corner. I have something fun for you. Gu Fei said to Han family young master. Oh. Han family young master was extremely surprised. The others were also startled, but Sword Demon quickly remembered something. As expected, Gu Fei took out the magic pointed hat and threw it to Han family young master. How about it, do you dare to wear it? Han family young master picked it up and looked at it. He nodded and said, the attributes are not bad. The style is also not bad, right? Gu Fei said. The others were all smirking. Style? Han family young master picked up the hat and looked at it a few times. Is the style that important? I don't believe there's anything in this world that can ruin my beauty. Fuck. Everyone raised their middle fingers in disdain. This person's shamelessness and narcissism was even defeated by such a funny hat. Are you sure you don't want it? Han family young master asked Gu Fei. Gu Fei waved his hand. He was a person who cared about his face. He really couldn't wear this hat. It was very childish. If his students saw it, how could he be a teacher in the future? Do I need to give you money? Han family young master asked. Take it, take it. Gu Fei of course didn't need it. Thus, this guy very calmly accepted it. Gu Fei was about to say something else when the wall of the room suddenly rang. Someone knocked a few times and carefully asked, is Qianli Yizue here? Gu Fei felt that the voice was a bit familiar and hurriedly replied, who is it? Come in. Two people walked in. Gu Fei turned around and saw Duo Mu and Mudwa. How helpless. Recently, he had been too popular. Is it convenient? Duo Mu and Mudwa weren't strangers to Gu Fei, so they didn't need to explain their intentions. You guys do what you need to do. The other five prepared to leave. They didn't have anything important to discuss here. They hadn't received all the rewards yet and the guild merger still had to wait. Don't. You guys are all famous experts. If it's convenient, we'd like to ask you guys for your opinions. Duo Mu and Mudwa said. The experts were very comfortable listening to this, so they all sat down. Speak, speak. What's the problem? It's the current rumor that all the big guilds are fighting for immunity from arrest. Duo Mu said. Immunity, from arrest? The others were at a loss. Yeah, didn't Qianli get a new piece of equipment? I heard that you can search the ID of a wanted target, right? Duo Mu asked. It's not equipment, it's an item. Brother, you spoke first. Yes, it's called a wanted license. Unscathed in battle said. The reward is a license upgrade, so there's this new function. Yu Tian Xinming said. Qianli, do you have anything to add? Duo Mu asked Gu Fei. No. Gu Fei said. We went to the city hall just now. I heard that Qianli, you've already rejected all of the guild immunity requests. Then what are the requirements to succeed? Duo Mu asked. Beauty and wealth. For example, the skinny dance. You're the first to be exempted. Yu Tian Xinming was the first to answer. Brothers, true brothers. For example, I'm Qianli's true brother. Unscathed in battle said seriously. Noobs, and also noobs. I don't think Qianli is interested in noobs. He only knows how to search for experts. Brother, you said. Qianli, do you have anything to add? Duo Mu asked. Why don't we just interview them? Gu Fei suggested. Chapter 775. You do it, you do it. Unscathed in battle and Yu Tian Xinming nodded and bowed, indicating for Gu Fei to come forward and accept the interview. I'll add on. Brother, you wouldn't let go of the opportunity to gossip no matter what. Duo Mu and Mudwa looked at Gu Fei. Seeing that he didn't have any objections, they continued the interview. After that, the questions were answered by Gu Fei himself. Duo Mu and Mudwa had the demeanor of a professional reporter. The questions they asked were mostly ordinary, not awkward or incisive. But after they sorted them out and wrote them down, it was another matter. Fortunately, the two of them had always reported on Gu Fei from the perspective of flattery and flattery. So, although it was a bit exaggerated sometimes, the people who read the report were basically Brother Yu. When he came back, he told it to everyone as a joke, so Gu Fei just laughed it off and ignored it. Duo Mu and Mudwa were very serious about their work. After the interview, they quickly left to prepare their draft. Just as Gu Fei let out a sigh of relief, a dang 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 sound rang out again. The few of them were startled. Someone was already calling from outside. Is Brother Qianli here? This time, the voice was very unfamiliar. Gu Fei happened to be sitting by the door. He turned around and poked his head out. Just as he was about to see who it was, he was shocked. People. A sea of people. It was unknown when so many people had squeezed into Little Ray's bar. They were lined up in a long snake formation, twisting and turning in the bar, all the way from the entrance to the bar where Gu Fei was. When Gu Fei poked his head out, the person in front of the door immediately smiled. Hello, Brother Qianli. You are? I'm the president of Mirrored Flowers, Reflection. My name is Mirrored Flowers, the person introduced herself. You guys, sigh. Gu Fei didn't know what to say. Can I go in and talk? Mirrored Flowers expressed. Come in, come in. The one who answered wasn't Gu Fei, but the other five. At this time, they enthusiastically invited Jing Huayuan into the private room and then patted Gu Fei's shoulder. Work hard, you can do it. After saying this, the five of them swaggered off. Little Ray was overjoyed at this time. With so many people coming all of a sudden, he didn't care that there were no seats. They all ordered him to take the wine. For the sake of convenience, they even asked for bottles. Little Ray was overjoyed. Gu Fei saw that it couldn't go on like this. There was no end to it. Could it be that he could only hide in the wilderness from now on? With that thought in mind, Gu Fei also stepped out of the private room and flew up to Little Ray's bar. He waved his hand and said, Everyone, listen to me. This time, the discipline was much better than at the municipal building. It was unknown how the presidents negotiated, but everyone lined up in an orderly manner and maintained silence. Even Gu Fei, who was being interviewed by Duo Mudwa in the private room, didn't notice that so many people had gathered just a wall away. Now that Gu Fei had spoken, everyone was even quieter. Gu Fei opened his mouth and said, I'm very clear about everyone's intentions. However, bounty missions are the main joy of my game. Without them, most of my game would be meaningless, so I definitely won't back down in this aspect. Everyone, please go back. Everyone was nodding their heads, patiently listening to Gu Fei, as if they understood him very well. But as soon as Gu Fei finished speaking, a voice immediately followed up, Boss Qianli, can we talk together? Is my meaning not clear enough? Gu Fei said. Boss Qianli, listen to me. Someone shamelessly rubbed against him. Fuck. Gu Fei really didn't know what to do. Why didn't these players give up no matter what? Gu Fei couldn't just directly kill them all. He couldn't afford to provoke them, so he could only hide. He took out a teleportation scroll and quietly shook it. Suddenly, a white light flashed on the bar, and Gu Fei disappeared. Sigh. The players were all dejected, but he had already resolutely left. They couldn't do anything about it. The players were afraid of Gu Fei, but they were also somewhat dissatisfied in their hearts. They felt that this person was determined to go against all the players in the city. It was really not harmonious. After waiting for a while, the presidents gradually dispersed. At a table in the corner of Little Ray's bar, Yi Xiaowu was gritting his teeth at Broken Arrow. Did you see that? I saw it. Broken Arrow sighed. If it was just a normal player, getting such a reward wouldn't be a big deal at all. But in the hands of Qianli when he was drunk, look, how big of a storm did he set off. Everyone's game state was ruined. Yi Xiaowu said hatefully. After this kind of large-scale event, the system's reward was random. Even Yi Xiaowu couldn't predict it in advance. He also later found out from the players that Qianli caused such an incident when he was drunk. Later, he followed the presidents to Little Ray's bar to see what happened. Unexpectedly, he saw that Qianli didn't give face to anyone and insisted on continuing his game style. With such a strong hindrance, will no one dare to PK in Cloud City in the future? Broken Arrow said. Very likely. Yi Xiaowu said. Then as a game designer, do you support players PK or not? Broken Arrow suddenly asked. This. Yi Xiaowu was startled. After a slight hesitation, he said, from the perspective of the market, we support more players to compete in PK. This way, we can encourage players to be more involved in the game and generate more spending in the game. Then what's the point of setting up such a wanted system? Now that Qianli is drunk, he's going to ruin your job. Broken Arrow said. Yi Xiaowu wanted to cry but had no tears. On the surface, the wanted system is to suppress PK, but in reality, its biggest function is to help players with PK points wash away their PK points. It's also a disguised form of encouragement for PK. But who would have thought that there would be this kind of guy who would make wanted quests for fun all day long? He doesn't have PK points, but he still does this quest. The reward of this quest isn't that great. Who would risk losing levels to PK just for this little bit of reward? If he wasn't so invincible, would he dare to endlessly carry out wanted quests like this? Just a few mistakes and he'll lose all his levels. What about apple cider vinegar? That guy killed over 1,000 people and he doesn't seem to have missed once, right? But to say invincible, he's far from it. Broken Arrow said. The problem is that if a normal player wanted to PK, he would be like that crazy apple cider vinegar and just randomly PK people. Why would he do a wanted quest? This guy. AI, he's doing this for the good of his character. But his existence has always affected the game, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Before, he was just taking equipment and killing bosses, and then he developed efficient leveling methods. Now, he's reversing the city war, making it so that no one in Cloud City dares to PK. I really can't imagine what kind of damage he'll cause if he continues to play. Yi Xiaowu said. Walking out of Cloud City, making it so that no one in the world dares to PK? Broken Arrow guessed. That's not impossible. He'll probably soon discover the hidden function of his wanted license. Yi Xiaowu said. What function? Broken Arrow asked. He already doesn't need to go to the wanted quest office to receive wanted quests anymore. He only needs to use the wanted license's function to search and find a target, then he can directly receive it. Moreover, he doesn't need to submit a quest to receive the next one. He can first continuously complete quests and then submit them all at once. These are the two hidden functions of the wanted license after raising it by 2 levels. Yi Xiaowu said. What else can we do? Broken Arrow asked. Our strength isn't enough. Yi Xiaowu clenched his teeth. Ever since he discovered the changes in the last stage of the city war, his originally strong confidence constantly wavered. He discovered that others would become more and more familiar with this world, but he, on the other hand, would become more and more unfamiliar with this world. Moreover, he would never be able to become familiar with it again, because he could no longer turn back. At this time, Gu Fei once again flew to the wilderness. These were the coordinates he made during the city war. At this time, he was slowly moving towards the main city. On one side, he sent a message in the channel, Brother Yu, has the level rankings been determined? I'm in the game. In a bit, I'll go down and take a look. After the rewards are received, it should be determined. But our Cloud City might be in for a tragedy this time. Brother Yu said. Everyone was silent. The 200,000 players in the other main cities were in high spirits because of the rewards, but the 200,000 players in Cloud City were working for nothing. In the end, they received a little benefit from the government's recruitment. Clearly, from an overall level perspective, there would be a big drop. Do you want a list of the expert players? Leave this to me, I'm good at it. Brother Yu was excited. He felt like he was a hitman's agent. And, that's good. Gu Fei didn't hold back. You're really going to keep killing like this? Sword Demon asked. Doing quests, I'm doing quests. Gu Fei said. So many people, you really don't give any face at all. Everyone was quite surprised. Actually, face was a very magical thing. Sometimes, it was more effective than money or friendship. Especially when there were so many people begging you to give face, it wasn't easy to refuse them without hesitation. How's the guild? Today was supposed to be a big day for Against the Heavens and Amethyst to merge, but Gu Fei's limelight was always this strong, stealing all the attention. There are still some people who haven't received their rewards. Let's talk after receiving them. Sword Demon said. What about your faction reward? Did you receive it? Gu Fei asked. I received it. Sword Demon smiled bitterly, just some experience and money. Sword Demon really didn't do much in terms of faction. He only succeeded in assassinating White and Black. After that, he couldn't find the small bottle cap. After that, he followed Gu Fei to conquer the guild building and capture the king. After that, he led the guild. Then what are you doing now? Gu Fei asked. Hee, of course we're going to the new territory. Unscathed in battle was even more proud than Sword Demon. This guy didn't get any benefits from the tragic city war. At this time, he was excited to see what kind of benefits this territory had. The system was quite considerate. Since it was given to the same guild, the two districts were together. The two districts, Cloud and Miyun, were located in the southeast of Cloud City. They were slightly closer to the east gate. The location wasn't good, but it wasn't too bad either. The Knights' camp of Cloud City was located in the Miyun district. With such an offline area, it was a bit of a guarantee of popularity. At the entrance of the Knights' camp, there were a few scattered stalls. As a whole, the development of Cloud and Miyun districts was not complete. At present, the system's real estate business was idle because the land price was too high. Most players couldn't afford it. At present, the most buyers of the real estate business were all guilds. Because guilds could raise funds to buy houses, their financial resources were relatively strong. No matter big or small, buying a house would make them look more imposing and confident in recruiting new people. The award of the two districts sounded like a sentence from the city lord to outsiders. But as members of the guild, the system told them to go to the mailbox to receive a letter from the system. There would be a detailed explanation of this reward. Of course, Sword Demon and the others had already taken it out. The letter stated that the award of the two districts was first to provide a big house of 200 square meters in each district. Then, it was the rules for players to manage the districts. After reading through the letter, everyone understood. Rather than saying that they were given two districts, it was better to say that they were only given the management rights of two districts. The Heaven-defying Guild could be said to be the operator and manager of the two districts. The main business of the districts was real estate. In the past, the houses in the system were only for sale. But now, under the control of players, there was an option to rent. But whether it was for rent or sale, the system was still the one who got the majority of the income. As the manager of the districts, they could only get some commission from it, which looked like a commission. However, these commissions could be earned in the long run. Even if the houses were sold, the players couldn't think about getting rid of them once and for all. There was still property tax to be paid. If they opened a business in the houses, a portion of the transaction tax would also be given to Sword Demon and the others. This was really a good money-making machine. Sword Demon and the others had two districts in an instant. Including the 4 more districts that would be created after the merger, the economic prospects of the guild were bright and very promising. Because of this, the Sword Ghost felt even more embarrassed when he thought about how the purple crystal reincarnated lady wanted to quit and play the guild again. He once again suggested to July that they should stay in the guild, but they could treat it as an independent group. They could then be given a city to manage. Chiue declined on behalf of the girls of Amethyst Rebirth. The girls were in a good mood. They had also read the letter from the system and understood the value of the districts, but it didn't change their original intentions. In their understanding, if they didn't follow the city guarding guild, they wouldn't have been able to get such a high reward. So, they felt that this district award wasn't theirs to begin with, so they didn't feel the pinch even if they didn't get it. Sword Demon smiled bitterly. According to what they said, how many people in the guild were qualified to enjoy this reward? This kind of thing couldn't be said if. At that time, everyone who joined the guild contributed, so they were all qualified. Saying that if they didn't come, then they didn't have it, so they shouldn't have it. This proposition didn't hold water. Even so, Sword Demon still couldn't convince the girls. The girls had already made up their minds. At this time, there were still a few girls who hadn't received the reward. July was waiting for these girls to receive the reward before quitting. Don't discuss it with them. Go back and see if we can transfer the districts. If we can, transfer 2 to them, brother, you suggested. If it was any other time, unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming would most likely feel the pinch, but when they thought about transferring it to Amethyst, they immediately felt relieved. Okay. Sword Demon nodded. As they spoke, they continued to walk around their district. Brother Yu quickly took out his little notebook to count the number of empty houses on each street, how many shops there were, what they did for a living, which belonged to the system, which belonged to players, and how many street stalls there were. As they walked, the door of a big house suddenly opened. A person walked out cheerfully and waved at them. Hello, everyone. Han family young master slapped his head. I knew it. I have a feeling that I've been here before. The other 4 people squinted at him. You really don't participate in guild activities? What appeared in front of them was upstream against the current, and the door that he opened was also embedded with their guild's emblem. Upstream's guild encampment turned out to be in the heaven-defying Cloud District. Everyone, I knew you would come here. Come in and have a seat, Upstream invited them warmly. Sword Ghost and the others exchanged glances with each other. In the end, they entered Singing to Wine's encampment. It was a huge suite with a waiting room, a long corridor, and rooms on both sides. Yutian Shinming stuck out his tongue. This room has to be 300 square meters, right? 286 square meters. Upstream chuckled. Oh, that's 1 square meter bigger than Unhindered in the 4 Seas. Yutian Shinming said. It didn't sound like a coincidence. Upstream chuckled, feeling proud that his encampment was 1 square meter bigger than Unhindered in the 4 Seas. This way, please. Going against the flow, he led the 5 of them inside. There were other people in the room. They were all core members of Upstream, and they greeted the 5 people in a friendly manner. Han family young master rarely participated in guild activities, but he had been here before. The more he walked, the more familiar he became, and he couldn't help but take a detour in the middle. The people behind him were startled. Upstream and Han family young master were walking in a different direction. Just as he squeaked, Upstream had already turned around. When he saw Han family young master walk in that direction, he was startled and quickly nodded. All right, let's talk over there. Everyone was confused as they entered the room that young Master Han had entered. Upon closer inspection, they realized that it was a small tavern. The room wasn't big, and there were only 2 tables. However, it was much more meticulous than the taverns outside. Upstream led them to sit down and took some wine. He originally wanted to bring them to their conference room, but he didn't expect Han family young master to only care about wine and not people. Guild leader Upstream, you've really put in a lot of effort into decorating this place. Sword Demon looked around and thought about how to tidy up their guild encampment in the future. Not at all, just do it casually. Going against the flow, he humbly poured wine for them and then sat down with them. After that, they really did chat about some unimportant topics. When Sword Ghost and the others said that they were going to leave, he politely escorted them out of the door. Seeing the door close behind them, the 5 of them smiled bitterly. He's really patient, going against the current. It seems like he wants to build a good relationship with us step by step. Unscathed in Battle said. Patience is patience, but this guy always leaves too many traces when he does things. It's obvious that he has a purpose. This makes people feel rebellious. Brother, you said. Let's go, let's go. I'm not done counting yet. Brother, you waved his little book. Sword Demon was still looking at the encampment of singing and wine. When everyone greeted him, he turned around. I suddenly feel that we have a huge advantage. In terms of economy, we have the city to collect commissions. In terms of combat, Qianli's suppression has scared so many people away from PK. Isn't it too easy for our guild to develop? Chapter 776. Brother Yu, Unscathed in Battle, and Yutian Shinming all nodded their heads at the Sword Demon's suggestion. Han Family Young Master, on the other hand, shook his head disapprovingly. That's what you're saying. Currently, most of the major guilds' attitude towards Qianli is to rope him in and curry favor with him. Even if they have any feelings, they're all hiding it in their hearts. But if Qianli doesn't give them any face and forces them into a dead end, there will come a day when a cornered dog will do something desperate. When that time comes, Qianli will truly become the public enemy and a street rat. Will Qianli be afraid? Unscathed in Battle didn't think much of it. He's not afraid. But what if the other party uses some coercive tactics? Han Family Young Master said. What do you mean? Unscathed in Battle said. Using family to threaten people. Haven't you seen this in movies and TV shows? In the game, for example, you, me, or the Reborn Amethyst's group of women, what if the other party chooses to continuously kill these people to threaten Qianli? With Qianli's personality, what do you think he'll do? Han Family Young Master said. After everyone was silent for a while, Sword Demon said, Qianli will probably ask us to hide if we can't protect ourselves. Then, he'll risk his life to kill these people. Yes, that's Qianli's style. Unscathed in Battle said. In any case, I don't think he'll be threatened by others. Yutian Shinming said. Especially in the game. This kind of threat is very easy to avoid. Let's just travel to another main city for a few days. When we come back, who knows who will be the one to die? Brother, you said. Everyone nodded. After that, Yutian Shinming looked like he wanted to say more. After a slight hesitation, he gathered his courage and said, more importantly, in Cloud City, besides you, who else would do such a shameless thing? When the others heard this, they were all shocked. They felt like they had foreseen a storm. Who would have thought that the Han clan's young master would only say in disdain, I still can't understand the wisdom and awareness of you mortals. The mortals' faces immediately darkened. They ignored this fellow and continued to count the 2 districts. The main city was quite large, and the area of the 2 districts wasn't small either. It wasn't easy for Sword Demon and the others to walk every street. In the end, Yutian Shinming, Unscathed in Battle, and the others lost interest in this boring shopping. Only Sword Demon and Brother Yu were still serious. The Han family's young master, on the other hand, was seriously dealing with his wine. When it was all over, they returned to the guild base that the system had given them for free. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle went in and almost fell to the ground. Sword Demon and Brother Yu began to seriously look through the information that had been sorted out along the way. At this time, there were more than 5 people who came to visit the new house. As the guild leader, Sword Demon didn't set any restrictions on the room, so as long as they were members of the Defiant Guild, they could freely enter and exit. Seeing the arrival of the few core bosses of the guild, the players surrounded them. These players were very overpowered. They had already gained a lot in the city war, but until now, they hadn't established any relationship with the guild. Everyone was more like a temporary tourist group. At this time, many people discovered the great prospects of this guild and began to work hard to integrate into the environment. Of course, building a good relationship with the core bosses was the most important step. Let Boss Sword Demon say a few words to us. Some people jeered. It wasn't easy to know that the boss of the guild was Sword Demon. Many players were still confused at this time and thought that this was a guild where Qianli was drunk. Sword Demon had a proper attitude and was serious. There was no humor in his words. Frankly speaking, it was a relatively boring speech, but it still won a round of applause and cheers. Looking at the group of unfamiliar faces and the noisy noise in the room, Sword Demon was a little emotional. Did I finally establish a guild? He wondered how his old buddies were doing now. Of course, Sword Demon had a group of buddies in the online game. There were many like the Han family young master who happened to be born in the same main city as him. Later, because of his appearance and unfavorable factors such as being defeated by Gu Fei, he chose not to follow Sword Demon anymore. After that, there was no longer any contact, not even a greeting. During this period of time in the game, Sword Demon would occasionally hear from others about these IDs that he was once familiar with. They didn't continue to gather together. After being disappointed with Sword Demon, everyone went their separate ways and found their own guilds to develop. Until now, there was no old friend in Cloud City who was relatively famous, and he hadn't heard of anyone who was the core of any guild. At this time, looking at the new guild members in front of him, Sword Demon suddenly thought of his group of old friends. Just as he was feeling emotional, he vaguely heard someone ask, "Guild leader, when is the guild activity every day? Guild leader, when is the daily quest? Guild leader, what time is the daily quest? Guild leader, where does the guild go to farm gold?" Sword Demon was slightly startled. These questions were all familiar. He was once again standing at a new starting point. Brother, you noticed that Sword Demon seemed to be a little dazed at this time, so he jumped out to answer the question for Sword Demon. Everyone, don't worry. Our guild has just started. I think everyone knows that we have to merge with the Reborn Amethyst Guild. When the time comes, we will unify the activity plan and details. Everyone listened quietly, but Brother Yu was not excited about this. He was still immersed in the one-day tour of Shuangqing district. At this time, seeing that so many people were listening to him, he could not help but change the topic. Everyone, do you know? We, who have a city district, have a huge advantage over those guilds without a city district. As long as the real estate business in the city district is managed well, it is not a dream to make money every day. Is that so? Of course, the players were happy to be able to make money. Come. Let me give you a brief introduction of the situation in the city district. Brother Yu flipped open his little notebook, his eyebrows dancing as he entered. In a flash, half an hour had passed. Half of the audience was yawning, while the other half were discussing in low voices. Is this Brother Yu? He is so fucking talkative. I heard that he is just spouting nonsense on the forum. How can a real person talk like this? Can't they stop talking? Damn, how many rooms in the city district, how many are empty, how many are occupied by the guild, and how many are owned by the players? What a talent. I'm impressed. The players exclaimed while they listened painfully to Brother Yu continue to talk non-stop as if there was no one else around. Sword Demon and the others did not disturb him. It had been too long since Brother Yu had such an enjoyable introduction of information to others. The day passed quickly. Gu Fei returned from the suburbs. Afraid that he would be targeted again, he quickly went to the revival point and went offline. On the other hand, Sword Ghost and the others spent the entire day planning the guild's future activities and development. This time, it was not just Sword Demon and the others who discussed it. Players like South Azure Sword, Drifting, and Yun Xiang, who were more familiar than the unfamiliar faces, also participated. Everyone first sorted out the levels and equipment of all the guild members. Then, based on their performance in actual combat, South Azure Sword and the other experts pointed out some players who left a deep impression on them. After that, there were hundreds of people divided into groups to level, do quests, farm gold, practice life skills, and many other things. It was not easy to organize everything. With so many people working through the night, it was even more troublesome than the last time when they sorted out the letters about efficient leveling methods. Moreover, there were already signs of a conflict between them. For example, Drifting was used to being free and undisciplined. He was not interested in some of the guild's activities that were scheduled on time. Another example was South Azure Sword and the others. They were professional players who relied on the game to support themselves. Start a guild? Sure. However, it depended on how much profit the guild could bring in and how much RMB the guild could earn each month. If it was something like continuously leveling up, growing stronger, becoming the #1 guild in Cloud City, and then venturing into the parallel world, they weren't interested in such a thing at all. Therefore, everyone stuck to their own opinions and argued endlessly. After a night, everyone had a headache. As the guild leader, Sword Demon realized that there was still a long way to go in the future. They logged on the next day. The members of Reborn Amethyst and Against the Heavens had already received their rewards. However, if they wanted to merge, they needed to submit an application to the guild building. The current guild leader of Reborn Amethyst, Chinli, was very irresponsibly not online, causing everyone to wait for a long time. In the end, they waited for an entire day. It was only after dinner that Gu Fei calmly logged on. The few days of the citywide war were extremely long. This guy really cared about his physical fitness. Originally, he didn't want to go online for a few days, but the people in the game really couldn't wait any longer. Brother Yu was lucky enough to get Gu Fei's phone when he was doing the efficient leveling method last time. He directly went offline and called Gu Fei. When he heard that everyone was waiting for him, he felt quite embarrassed and immediately went online. The guild building is waiting for you. Sword Demon messaged. Can I give the guild leader position to someone else? Gu Fei asked. See who you can give it to. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei opened the guild list and glanced at it. Each name was more unfamiliar than the last. July and the others that he knew were all gone. Where's July and the others? Gu Fei was surprised. They've already left the guild. Sword Demon said. After the girls of Reborn Amethyst received the citywide war rewards, they had already left the guild. This matter had already been explained to the members of the guild. The girls used to advertise when recruiting new players. Now that the girls were announced to be leaving, many players felt like they had been tricked by a false advertisement. This situation made Sword Demon feel quite awkward, but he respected the girls' choice and braced himself. Although the players felt that it was a pity, in the end, they didn't make too much of a fuss. There were a few strong-willed players who wanted to follow the girls. Fireball recommended them to Eternal Life in Flower Bush. In the end, they hit it off and regretted not meeting each other earlier. Eternal Life in Flower Bush suddenly gained a few more valiant and vulgar men. Although the guild wasn't the same, the people in his friend list were still there. Gu Fei saw that July, Luo, and the others were online, so he sent them a message to express his condolences. We're also in the guild building. July replied. After the two guilds merge, we'll use a very overpowered name. Then, I'll register the guild ID of Reborn Amethyst again. How about it, do you want to come back? Me. I think I'll pass. Gu Fei laughed dryly. But the girls unanimously agreed to make you an honorary member of our guild. July said. Really? I've also made a huge contribution. Gu Fei joked. You can say that. July said. Gu Fei chatted with these people as he arrived at the guild building. The scene was livelier than he expected. Looking around, there were hundreds of people from these two guilds. When Gu Fei arrived, the first person to notice him was Fireball. He immediately ran over and told Gu Fei that in order to celebrate the merger of the two guilds, after the merger, everyone would go to the outskirts to hold a bonfire party. The girls of Reborn Amethyst were also invited to participate. That's interesting. Gu Fei laughed dryly. He wanted to quickly go offline and rest after the merger, but now it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy. Why would Sword Demon and the others let him go? Gu Fei wouldn't be unreasonable under such great hospitality. It wasn't like he'd kill all the guys who didn't let him go offline, right? As Gu Fei expected, when he arrived at the building, Sword Demon and the others were there. As soon as they saw him, they immediately came over to talk about the evening event. They were basically informing Gu Fei to participate, not discussing it with him. Gu Fei saw that everyone was extremely excited and was infected by it. He nodded in agreement. After that, he and Sword Demon went to find the NPC in charge of the merger. The system had always been efficient. After the two of them followed the instructions, all the players of the two guilds received a system notification: Reborn Amethyst and Very Against the Heavens are merging. The new guild is Very Against the Heavens, Level 4, Guild Leader Sword Demon, 134 members. Oh. Hundreds of players screamed, giving the system notification to boost their morale. At this time, Sword Demon also sent a message in the new guild channel: Very Against the Heavens is officially formed. Let's go to the wilderness. Then, Sword Demon ordered. The bonfire party was the result of a night of negotiations. Considering that the two guilds had been established rather suddenly, the members of these two guilds had been gathered through extraordinary means. As a result, everyone was still unfamiliar with each other. Sword Ghost hoped that through this event, everyone would be able to build up their friendship. 134 people was a Very Against the Heavens number. All the Reborn Amethyst girls who were invited to participate were also present at this time. The total number of people in the team was still approaching 200. The group set off in a grandiose manner outside the city. Everyone in the newly merged guild was having a lively collective discussion in the channel. They were currently complaining about a major problem in the guild, and that was men. The players who discovered this problem pointed out that when they first invited everyone to join the guild, they said that it was a purely female guild. Why was there not a single girl in the entire guild now? This was too big of a contrast. Of course, at this moment, they weren't saying this out of awkwardness. It was already a joke. Therefore, the other players scanned the name list. As expected, there was not a single girl in the entire Very Against the Heavens. Sword Demon was also quite helpless about this matter. Originally, when Brother Yu and July went to recruit new people, although most of the players were male, there were still female players. However, in the end, these female players followed July to join Reborn Amethyst. Not a single one was left, and the Very Against the Heavens became a purely male guild. This was indeed a huge contrast to the previous publicity. Gu Fei was also looking at the chat in the channel. When he saw that there were indeed no girls in the guild, he was quite surprised. He sent a message to Slender Waist Dance: you also returned to Reborn Amethyst. Gu Fei thought that with Slender Waist Dance's personality, she would be more inclined to continue to stay in a guild with fighting spirit like Very Against the Heavens. Of course, but I'm a Very Against the Heavens honorary member, said Slender Waist Dance. What's that? You're an honorary member of Reborn Amethyst, why can't I be a Very Against the Heavens honorary member? If there's anything fun, you have to let me know. It's a must, said Slender Waist Dance. Gu Fei smiled bitterly. This girl always liked to compare herself to him. Who's that? Where's she, Xiaotian? Did she join your guild too? Gu Fei asked again. She didn't. She left the guild after receiving the reward and went to play on her own, said Slender Waist Dance. Gu Fei looked at his friends list. Shi Xiaotian was online. He wanted to ask, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he could only give up. He then asked about the strange pupil sisters. As expected, the two sisters didn't want to leave their old friends in Xia Fog City. They returned home first, saying that they would think about it before making a decision. What a shame, said Gu Fei. Yeah. Slender Waist Dance also sighed. It'll be very inconvenient to borrow rings in the future, said Gu Fei. You're inhumane. Slender Waist Dance thought that he was reminiscing about his old comrades, but this guy was actually thinking about the girl's mana loop. It was noisy all the way out of the main city. Although it was evening in the real world, the sun was shining brightly in the game. It was a bit of a joke to call it a bonfire party because night would only come in 2 hours, and the duration of the night was only 2 hours. Because of this, everyone didn't care about the details. When they arrived at the chosen place, Sword Demon used the method of PvP to command the players to split into groups. There were those who set up fires, those who killed monsters for meat. Gu Fei looked around. How was this a bonfire party? Wasn't it more like a barbecue in the wild? Of course, no one dared to order Gu Fei around. He was happy to have nothing to do, so he wandered around. Later, he came across the South Wandering Sword 7. These 7 guys seemed to often participate in these kinds of activities. They seemed to be experts in doing these kinds of things. When they saw Gu Fei, the 7 of them came over and asked about the reward that Gu Fei had received. It's really a good reward. Flaming Jacket commented. Hiring a hitman to kill, luring the other party into PvP, then searching for the target's name and coordinates. Killing the target once, you'll lose 2 levels. Twice, you'll lose 4 levels. Haha, this is too fucking inhumane. We should take the wanted quest and send him to prison, wasting his precious time to punish him, right? Flaming Jacket was halfway through her speech when she noticed that Gu Fei's expression wasn't right. She quickly changed her topic. She was quite quick-witted. On the other hand, South Sword 7 sighed deeply and said, Actually, I want to know how our guild is going to develop. Chapter 777. Oh. Gu Fei could tell that Azure Sword had something to say. Compared to the other players, the 7 of them were clearly calmer. They did not seem to be in high spirits. The purpose of the 7 of us playing the game is different from theirs. Wandering Azure Sword said as he gazed at the excited gamers. He couldn't help but sigh. In the past, I thought it was blissful to have a hobby become a job. But after doing it for a long time, I realized that hobbies and jobs shouldn't be confused. When hobbies become jobs, they take on too much pressure. The fun that they once had as hobbies gradually disappeared. Are you talking about playing games? Gu Fei asked. Yes. Azure Sword nodded. There's nothing to play games. Gu Fei agreed seriously. The 7 of them were speechless. The players in the game, including Sword Demon and the others who were close to Gu Fei, would often stop talking to Gu Fei. If there's nothing to play games, what are you playing? Huarini could not help but ask. I'm not here to play games, are you here to do nothing? Huarini interrupted Gu Fei impulsively. No. Gu Fei shook his head. I'm here to beat people up. The conversation paused again. In fact, even in the real world, there were many people who suddenly stopped talking to Gu Fei. Beat people up? Azure Sword thought that they were rude enough to rob people. He did not expect that there would be people who would beat people up. Beating people up is a vulgar way of saying it. Seriously speaking, it's to find a place for me to use my kung fu. I can't beat people up on the streets, right? I can do a wanted mission in the game. I thought you guys knew. Gu Fei thought that this group of people should know his mentality in the game. Oh. I know. The 7 of them wiped their sweat. They knew that, but they did not understand why Gu Fei suddenly said, beating people up. Yes, I remember saying that, Gu Fei said. I did. The 7 of them said in unison. In the end, they were all stunned. Weren't they discussing their problems with Gu Fei? Why did they suddenly change the topic to the other party? Southern Azure Sword was the leader of the 7 players and the main speaker of the conversation. At this moment, he hurriedly stepped forward and handed a skewer to Gu Fei while forcefully changing the topic. How do you plan to deal with this guild? Guild? I don't know. I don't understand. As Gu Fei spoke, he squatted in front of the fire to roast the meat. As he roasted, he turned around and asked, "Can I roast it like this? I don't have life skills." "Sure." Southern Azure Sword nodded. Even without skills, players can still do this on their own. Only, the meat you roast won't have the same attributes as their cooking skills. Oh. Gu Fei replied. He focused back on the meat and rolled around the fire. Southern Azure Sword was about to continue the topic when Gu Fei suddenly said, "Who cut this meat?" Southern Azure Sword was startled. He turned around and saw black water come over. He was also confused. "I cut it." "What's wrong?" "His technique is really rough. Look at this cut." In the beginning, he relied too much on his finger strength. Halfway through, his strength wasn't enough, so he started to add in his wrist strength. That's why the front part of the cut was shaky. After adding in his wrist strength, it naturally became smoother. Actually, this isn't enough. Just relying on the human body is far from enough. As the saying goes, strength comes from the ground. "Boss, what are you talking about?" The 7 of them were stunned. "I'm talking about your meat," Gu Fei said. "You're talking about the meat? Aren't you talking about strength?" Blackwater said. "I'm talking about your strength from this piece of meat." "Did I say something wrong?" Gu Fei asked. "I'm ashamed. I've tried very hard to remember, but I really can't remember if I used finger strength or wrist strength when I cut this piece of meat," Blackwater said. "That's normal." Gu Fei nodded. "After all, you haven't received systematic training. This might be a very small detail that you might not even notice." Blackwater couldn't continue and looked at the other 6 with a pleading expression. Jiannan wanted to talk about the main topic twice, but he was led astray by Gu Fei. This was the 3rd time, so he decided to go all out. He took a deep breath and said, "What we mean is that we need to earn money in the game to support ourselves. But now that we've joined a heaven-defying guild, it's obvious that the game's entertainment is more important. So, we want to know if there's a suitable way for us to earn money in the future. For example, setting up a studio and teaching efficiency leveling. If there isn't, even though we want to play with everyone in the guild, we have to think of a way to survive." Jiannan finished speaking in one breath. Gu Fei was dumbfounded. After a long time, he opened his mouth wide and said, "So fast. What did you just say?" Kenan Yu almost spat blood on Gu Fei's face, but Gu Fei was finally concerned about the question of, "What did you say?" Dao Xiangmu rushed forward and took over Kenan Yu's task, repeating the situation that he had just said. "Oh. You're talking about this." Gu Fei nodded. "That's right, but I don't know much about the guild." "What did Sword Demon and the others say?" "Them?" Jiannan and the others looked a little sad. "We had some communication last night, but it didn't go well. In fact, we know that people like us are more utilitarian in the game, while Boss Sword Ghoul and the others are here purely for the fun of the game. They are the kind of people who truly love the game. People like us who rely on the game to earn money might be a waste of the game to them." Boss Sword Demon said that the current focus is on how to expand the guild. He didn't seem to care about the benefits that we brought up. "I know that this isn't suitable, but we have no choice. Us brothers have to eat. There should still be a lot of money from the efficiency leveling method, right?" Gu Fei said. "That's a lot, enough for us to sustain for a while. But this game is our livelihood, so we still hope to know a clear future. That way, we'll feel more at ease," Jiannan said. "Don't worry," Gu Fei said. "I think it's not that Sword Demon doesn't care, he just hasn't thought of how to deal with it. This is his first time creating a guild in this game. We're all friends, and the Sword Ghost will definitely think for his friends," Gu Fei said as he passed the roasted meat to Jiannan. Jian Nanyo's face was a little doubtful. He took the meat that Gu Fei handed over and took a bite. After chewing twice, he felt that something was wrong. He took it away from his mouth and looked at it, saying, "It's not cooked." "Really? Then roast it again." Gu Fei took the meat from Jiannan's hands and flipped it over the fire again. Jiannan hurriedly spat out the meat in his mouth and asked, "Do you know how to roast?" "I know a little." Gu Fei said that his knowledge came from Coward's Savior. He had roasted meat with Coward's Savior once and vaguely remembered rolling and rolling like this. "Let me do it." Blackwater stepped forward. "No, I'll try again." Gu Fei continued to focus on roasting the meat. The 7 of them were afraid and wanted to move away quietly. However, Gu Fei was very observant and immediately noticed. He pointed at Jiannan and said, "Don't go. You can only eat it. You've already bitten it." Jiannan burst into tears. "You've already tricked me once. Why don't you let me go? No wonder you're the #1 assassin in the game. You're very skilled in killing people regardless of whether you use a knife or not. You're trying to make me suffer." The other 6 looked at Jiannan with a tragic look in their eyes. Jiannan felt that he couldn't die in vain. He had to ask more questions, so he came back and asked, "Do we still want to continue our high-efficiency leveling method business?" This business was very profitable. Jiannan and the others had tasted the sweetness of it. They only hated that they didn't have this skill. Otherwise, they wouldn't care about the city war and would have wandered around to sell their skills. "That." Gu Fei nodded. "Then, you guys should really talk to that encyclopedic statesman guy more. He's likely to be using games to earn money. You guys can work together to manage this project." "What about you?" Jiannan asked. The other 6 were also listening. They weren't familiar with Bai Jingluan. They were friends with Gu Fei from an enemy. They admired not only Gu Fei's skills but also Gu Fei's character. Especially when Gu Fei didn't take a big cut after he made money. Of course, the employees liked such a boss. "Me? I don't need this to make a living. I'm just playing," said Gu Fei. At first, he didn't have the intention to make money from this. The idea was all by Jingluan's. Gu Fei was forced to do something beyond his ability. "I see." Jiannan nodded and began to think about how to communicate with Bai Jingluan. However, Glu suddenly pointed and said, "Hey, speak of the devil." Everyone looked in that direction and saw Bai Jingluan. Not only him, but there were also people from Forest Shade City, such as Shui Shen and Lu Ku, who were greeting Sword Demon and the others. "You've finally established a guild again. How can I not come over to congratulate you?" Shui Shen's voice floated over with the wind. Then he saw Han family young master. Shui Shen, who was smiling, immediately gritted his teeth and said, "I heard that someone was causing trouble on the opposite side during the city war. How do you still have the face to stand here? Tisk, childish." The young master of the Han family casually spat out these 3 words, angering Shui Nan half to death. Without waiting for Shui Nan to argue, he walked to the side. "Yo, Cloud City's #1 trap technician, you're here too." Shui Shen saw that Han family young master had run away, so he continued to greet people. Suddenly, he saw someone and immediately shouted. Gu Fei was startled. He quickly got up and looked around. From the direction where Shui Shen's gaze was pointing, he found Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's figure. If this guy was here, the people from Eternal Life Among Flowers were probably here too. If that was the case, the girls would be in danger. Gu Fei quickly looked around to see where the girls were caught by the trap, but he saw that Fireball was already rubbing over. "Brother Zue, what are you looking for? Are Eternal Life Among Flowers all here?" Gu Fei said. "They're here, but Brother Zue, don't worry. They won't dare to mess around. Messing around like this is not giving face to you and Boss Sword Demon," Fireball said. Although Sword Demon had always been the boss of the guild, it was clear that in Fireball's mind, Gu Fei was always the leader. When the two were mentioned, Gu Fei was always ranked first. This was the difference between the two. Then what are they doing? Gu Fei looked around but didn't see eternal life among flowers. He only saw Tsubasa Sakuratsuka barbecuing meat next to a bonfire. Trying to hit on a girl. Fireball said. Gu Fei was speechless. Didn't you say you wouldn't mess around? How is hitting on a girl messing around? Brother Zue, look, I'm hitting on you right now. Am I messing around? Fireball said. When have you ever not messed around? Gu Fei said. Brother Zue, you really are my boss. You know your little brother too well. Fireball flattered. Gu Fei couldn't take this attack either. His hand trembled and the meat fell into the bonfire. Fireball hurriedly tried to save it, but was stopped by South Harmony. Forget it, just change to another skewer. While they were talking, Water Depth and the others had just arrived at the bonfires and walked around to where Gu Fei and the others were. After greeting each other, 100 Lives Jingluan bragged to Gu Fei about how impressive he was in the city war. Gu Fei listened and smiled faintly. He only said, that's because I wasn't defending the city. 100 Lives Jingluan was so depressed that he wanted to die. However, his martial arts were far from Gu Fei's, and the honest 100 Lives Jingluan wouldn't deny this. Gu Fei said and pointed at South Harmony's group of 7. These brothers were just asking about the leveling method business. In the future, you'll have to work together with them. You guys should plan it out. South Harmony saw that Gu Fei was taking the initiative to help them and was very happy. He immediately pulled 100 Lives Jingluan over to plan it out. But 100 Lives Jingluan seemed to suddenly remember something. He turned his head and said to Water Depth, you still haven't paid me for the city war. Yes, I have to. I'll collect it and send it to you later. Water Depth said. 100 Lives Jingluan nodded in satisfaction. South Harmony's group of 7 was even more elated. They really liked 100 Lives Jingluan's character of valuing profits. But to Sword Demon and the other experts, talking about money seemed to be a shameful and hurtful thing. South Harmony and the others didn't agree with this. The 7+1 quickly found a common language about making money and discussed the big plan together. Only Water Depth, Lu Ku, and Gu Fei were left by the bonfire. Not bad. You showed off again in the city war. Water Depth and Gu Fei weren't familiar with each other, but since this person greeted Tsubasa Sakuratsuka like that, it was obvious that he was naturally familiar with others. When he talked to Gu Fei, he didn't treat him as an outsider anymore. It's just a so-so. Gu Fei said modestly. At this moment, another person walked over from the side. Gu Fei saw him and greeted him with a smile. It's Manager Ling. Why are you here? Don't call me that. It sounds weird. Ling Gufeng hurriedly said, I heard that your 2 guilds merged and came here to celebrate. I'm here to congratulate you. I even chose a few brothers. They're all good at barbecuing. As expected of human resources. Gu Fei gave a thumbs up. But you'll have to ask our guild leader. Chi, he's over there. Gu Fei pointed at Sword Demon to Ling Gufeng. Then I'll go over. This way please. Ling Gufeng greeted Water Depth and Lu Ku, who he didn't know, and then went to find Sword Demon. Water Depth's expression was a bit unfriendly. He looked at Ling Gufeng's back and said, this person is? He's from the studio. He's called Ling Gufeng. He helped us a lot in the city war. Gu Fei knew that Water Depth wasn't friendly towards studios, but he still told him the truth. Oh. Which studio? Water Depth asked. Do you know Cloud Ting Studio? Gu Fei said. Oh, Cloud Teng. I know. It's a new studio that rose up in the past few years. Their reputation is pretty good, but now studios are very focused on this aspect. Those with bad records can't survive. Reputation doesn't mean anything. Moreover, it's a new studio, so they naturally have to do some fake work. Is that so? Of course, they are not good people, right? Gu Fei laughed. I can't say for sure, but I believe one thing. Water Depth said. What? All crows in the world are black. Water Depth said. Oh. After hearing this, Gu Fei looked at Ling Gufeng's back thoughtfully. Although this person gave him a good impression, 5 Knights also gave him a very deep impression. Water Depth continued to fan the flames. Look, the distribution of the city districts after the city war is really a super big cake. I think the studios want all of the districts under their control. During the city war, they must have put in a lot of effort. I think every main city has more or less districts under the control of the guilds controlled by the studios. Only you guys, your Cloud City, actually came up with the idea of the defending players defeating the attacking players. Those studios that invested in the city war definitely ate a blow this time. They'll definitely target you guys. Of course, it's not about revenge, it's mainly for business. The situation in your Cloud City district is much more profitable than the other main cities. Especially now that you guys have merged, the districts owned by the players in Cloud City are all in the hands of one guild. How advantageous is this? And it's also convenient to operate here. Other main cities, like our Forest Shade, our Extreme Frost got a district. Apart from us, a total of 17 guilds got the district reward. Speaking of this, I get angry. We got more than 300 points in the city battle, but we only gave it to one city district. Those bastards only got 100 or 2 points. How can it be a city district? Is there any justice in this world? We're off topic. Lu Ku said heavily from the side. Oh, back to the studio. You see, each district of our main cities wants to develop, so there's competition between them. Only your main cities don't have it at all. You guys are the only ones. This is a monopoly. Of course, there are those districts that are not controlled by the players, but I can guarantee that in the future, whether it's real estate or business, the districts controlled by the players will be the center. How can the rigid mechanical model of the system be a match for the players? Now, do you understand how big a cake you have in your hands? Water Depth said. Chapter 778. Gu Fei did not fully understand Shuai Zhe's long speech, but to show his politeness, he nodded along the way. Shuai Zhe looked at Gu Fei's enlightened expression and was naturally very satisfied. He nodded and said, "So, you must be careful. There's no good in this studio." Gu Fei looked at Ling Gufeng, who was talking to Sword Demon, and couldn't help but feel a little strange. If this guy had other intentions, then he was really a guy who was more sinister and cunning than 5 Knights. I don't know if this guy has ulterior motives, but I'm sure that there will be studios that will come to take your cake. Even if it's not Cloud Tang, there will always be other studios. Shuai Zhe saw that Gu Fei was paying attention to Ling Gufeng, so he came over and added. Why don't we go and listen to what they're talking about? Gu Fei suggested. Okay. Shuai Zhe accepted happily. So, the 3 of them also went over to Sword Demon and Ling Gufeng. Seeing the 3 of them coming over, Sword Demon and Ling Gufeng greeted them casually and continued their topic. They had no intention of avoiding it. Brother Yu and the others were also at the side at this time, listening to Sword Demon and Ling Gufeng's conversation with a serious expression. Gu Fei and Shuai Zhe didn't say anything. They listened quietly for a while and roughly understood. Gu Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Just like what Deepwater had said, all studios would be envious of Against the Heavens. Right now, Against the Heavens controlled the 6 districts of Cloud City, and Cloud Soaring Studio was no exception. However, at the very least, Cloud Soaring Studio didn't have any backstabbing schemes. They had sent Wind of the Valley over to cooperate with Against the Heavens. And the content of the cooperation was to help conquer the districts. Currently, the system had awarded the management rights of 6 city districts to Very Defiant. However, managing these 6 city districts wasn't an easy task. It would take a lot of time and effort to get on the right track. Moreover, Very Defiant was a newly established guild. Its foundation wasn't solid, and its members weren't yet united. Moreover, after the city war, even if the other guilds didn't say anything, they would definitely treat Very Defiant as a public enemy. They would think of ways to suppress Very Defiant, both in the open and in the shadows. Very Defiant's current situation was really a coexistence of opportunities and challenges. They had the deterrence of Qianli and the economic support of the districts, but at the same time, there were many internal and external troubles. Ling Gufeng saw this point and hoped to cooperate with Very Defiant. He wanted their studio to help Very Defiant take control of the districts. Ling Gufeng proposed many detailed terms and details. Obviously, he came prepared. After listening to him patiently, the Sword Ghost expressed that he couldn't make up his mind at the moment and needed to think about it. Of course, this topic was much more relaxed. There was no need to hesitate over such a small matter. After Sword Demon asked the barbecue masters about the price, the two sides happily carried out a small cooperation. Of course, this topic was much more relaxed. There was no need to hesitate over such a small matter. After Sword Demon asked the barbecue masters about the price, the two sides happily carried out a small cooperation. What do you think? Gu Fei asked Shueisha quietly. How depressing. This Ling Gufeng's opinion is very similar to mine. I also think that the reward of 6 districts is too much for you. I also went around the districts in the afternoon. Even our level 6 guilds might not be able to take care of everything. Your level 4 guilds are all new and unfamiliar. It's impossible for you to take care of 6 districts at once. Shueisha said. How are we going to take care of this district? Gu Fei didn't understand. This is something you don't understand. There's a brother in our guild who specifically told me about this in the afternoon. He said that the main cities in the game can only be said to have completed the layout of the buildings. Most of the buildings are empty. The system's previous operations were all done by the players, but now it's managed by the players. In order to maximize the benefits, we should consider integration, economy, safety, aesthetics, society, etc. This is the discipline of city planning. It's knowledge, understand? Shueisha said. Of course not. Do you understand? Gu Fei said. I don't understand either, but someone in our guild does. He's excitedly planning our district right now. Shueisha said proudly. You guys call that a district? It's just a village. It wasn't that Gu Fei hadn't been to Shady Forest City before. That city didn't even have city walls. The entire tribe in the forest talked about it as if it was a city. So you see, each city's geographical conditions, player quality, level, class distribution, and economic conditions are all different. We need to be realistic and do a good job of planning. This way, the construction of our district can develop in a healthy direction. Shueisha said. That's what your brother said, right? Gu Fei said. Of course. You sure have a good memory. Gu Fei worshipped. This kind of concept and vocabulary was completely unfamiliar to outsiders like them. To be able to remember it after hearing it once was quite amazing. However, Shueisha scratched his head and said, memory my ass. I read it to you according to the chat log. Is it really that exaggerated? Gu Fei said. Amateurs join in on the fun, but experts know the ropes. Shueisha said. I agree with what you said. Gu Fei nodded his head. He had been watched as a bystander many times. Basically no one could appreciate his PvP skills. When everyone mentioned Qianli, it was equipment, damage, and instant kills. Gu Fei was speechless. After listening Gully and Sword Demon finished their discussion, they weren't in a hurry to leave. They continued to stay and interact with the very overpowered players. At this time, the sky in the game gradually darkened and slowly turned into night. The bonfires of the players' barbecued meat finally began to become dazzling. Everyone chased after the light and gradually formed small circles around the bonfires. Sword Demon commanded the people and quickly raised a huge bonfire. The fire was so hot that people who were 5 meters away were sweating profusely. They couldn't get any closer and could only rely on throwing firewood. With a call, all the players began to gather around the big bonfire and formed a large circle. The blazing firewood reflected the night sky and the atmosphere became more and more lively. As the guild leader, Sword Demon, of course, had to speak at this time, but Sword Demon obviously wasn't an expert at controlling the atmosphere. The words he said seemed to be good, but when he called Sword Demon, it was as serious as a report. Brother Yu's face was full of tears. It was really a waste of the words he had painstakingly collected to host the bonfire party. Sword Demon finally finished reciting the words and let out a sigh of relief. Of course, he knew very well that he couldn't take on this big responsibility, so he quickly handed it over to Brother Yu. Brother Yu was naturally much more lively than Sword Demon. In addition, he was also well prepared. After coming out, he spoke wittily and quickly brought up the atmosphere. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle also came out one after the other, making jokes and looking down on each other, which also caused bursts of laughter. Of course, the theme of the party wouldn't be the talk show of these three guys. Brother Yu quickly flipped through his small notebook and recorded a number of games that he had found suitable for the bonfire party. However, because there were too many, it made it difficult for Brother Yu to choose. He only felt that this was good, but it was a pity not to play that. He really wanted to play all of them, but the night in the game only had 2 hours, so it was very urgent. Therefore, Brother Yu was a democracy. He said a few game names and asked everyone what they wanted to play first. There was a lot of cheering, and everyone expressed that the program they wanted to see the most was Qianli getting drunk and killing people instantly. Gu Fei felt that it was hard to refuse their hospitality, so he stood up and swung his sword a few times, indicating that it was not a problem to kill people instantly. The key was that no one would be killed instantly by him, so he had to perform a set of swordsmanship. The players applauded loudly, but Gu Fei knew very well that it was a waste to perform something profound for these guys, so he catered to what they liked. His moves were not reasonable in terms of attack and defense, but only fast and cool. After playing for a while, the response was really enthusiastic. Only Master of the 100 Realms looked at the players around him blankly and applauded crazily. He thought to himself, what is this? Is it because I'm not skilled enough and can't see through it? But why are so many ordinary players able to see through it? Brother Yu was inspired, so he put the game aside for the time being and asked if anyone else was willing to perform. There were shy and introverted players among the players, but there were also a large number of people who loved to show off. When Brother Yu asked, many people jumped out to perform. Some performed songs, some danced, some performed magic, and some imitated the show. The atmosphere became higher and higher, and as the core of the guild, Sword Demon and the others were very happy. It's really good to have this kind of activity every few days, Sword Demon said as he looked at a warrior who was dancing in the circle as if he was having a cramp. Right now we don't have many people, but when we become a level 6 guild with 1,000 people, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to organize, Brother Yu said. That's still early. We'll talk about it later, Sword Demon said. Brother Yu nodded in agreement, but unexpectedly, Yutian Shinming's expression changed at this time. It seems that there are a lot of people coming this way. Who? Sword Demon was startled when he heard this. East, south, west, north, there are people in all directions. Yutian Shinming looked in all 4 directions and confirmed that there were no mistakes. Sword Demon and the others didn't have eagle eyes, and their eyesight was a bit worse than Yutian Shinming's. Although they were pointed out, they still didn't see anyone. However, there was a problem that had to be pointed out. Yutian, the order you looked at just now was south, north, west, and east. Why are you still talking about this at a time like this? Yutian Shinming rarely criticized others for mocking him for having a bad sense of direction. I think they don't have good intentions. Guild Sharpshooter, pay attention to the surroundings. Sword Demon issued an order in the guild channel at this time. The players who were still in a joyous atmosphere were startled, and then immediately thought that this was a new game. The sharpshooter players all stood up and looked around. There are so many people. The sharpshooter players finally noticed the situation. The players present weren't just OP players either. Purple Crystal Rebirth and Eternal Life Among Flowers, these two guilds were supposed to be at loggerheads, but right now, they were both OP players VIPs in a very inharmonious manner. Boundless Mang heard the waves of shouts and hurriedly took out her binoculars. It was night time, but the game company didn't want the players to not want to go online because of the dark, so they made the moonlight especially bright. Although it wasn't as bright as daytime, it was enough to maintain basic lighting. There are people coming, and a lot of them. Boundless Mang confirmed. Chapter 779. How much is a lot? Sword Demon and the others all knew about the binoculars in the vast wilderness. When they needed to confirm the reconnaissance, they had already taken the initiative to find her. It's all people. We seem to have been surrounded. This number of people is definitely not from one or two guilds. I guess it should be the guilds that were defeated in the city war. Now they are gathering to retaliate against you. Of course, the vast wilderness was very rich in battle experience. Damn it, no manners at all. Zhan Wushang expressed his anger. This kind of thing was like being willing to gamble but not admitting defeat. It was very tasteless. This is a challenge. Sword Demon's expression was solemn. The target of public criticism. This is the current situation of our guild. We must not retreat from this battle. Once we show weakness, then the players in Cloud City will know that very overpowered. Although we are in charge of 6 districts, joining them is not a good thing. In this battle, we might be annihilated, but we must make these guys pay an even more painful price. We must let the players of Cloud City know that killing a heaven-defying monster is definitely not a happy thing. At this critical moment, Sword Demon's speech was not as superficial as his speech at the bonfire party. Every word he said was very clear and went straight to the hearts of the people. When the players present heard it, they all had a thought in their hearts, that's right. We must not let anyone think that we are easy to bully. Even if we die, we must make the opponent feel afraid because we will not die for nothing. Boss Sword Demon said it well. Someone shouted, followed by a round of applause and roars that pierced the night sky. This night's gathering actually reached its peak at this time. And the one who brought up the atmosphere this time was Sword Demon, who always looked a bit dull on other occasions. According to the arrangement of the city war, arrange the battle team. Sword Demon ordered. The team was quickly formed. The city war had just ended a day ago, and the players still remembered the team arrangement at that time. Try to break through, seize the initiative, and then turn around to give them a painful blow. Sword Demon said. The players cheered in response. At this moment, the players surrounding them finally appeared in everyone's vision. Prince Han walked up to Boundless Mang and extended his hand towards her. Although the Han family young master would return it quickly after using it, the frequency of him lending it out was too high. Frankly speaking, he felt that he was the one who borrowed it. Even so, Mang still handed the binoculars to the Han family young master. The Han family young master raised his binoculars and looked around. He immediately sent a message in the channel. The distance is about 200 meters. The enemies are standing 1 meter apart. The thickness of their formation is about 10 people. Their numbers are estimated to be between 12,000 to 15,000 people. The closer we are, the thicker the formation will be. The earlier we break out, the better. Everyone, hurry up, shouted the Sword Demon. Warriors at the front, mages at the back. Han family young master said. Priest in the center, knight in the back, Sword Demon said. Archers, flanks. Thieves, go into stealth and scatter. Why are there 2 people commanding? The OP players were confused as they whispered to each other. But the orders are coherent, or maybe they complement each other. Everyone was confused, but still did as they were told. 2 people commanding Lu Ku and Deepwater heard the discussions of the OP players and smiled at each other. What a familiar memory, but we won't be able to hear it. Lu Ku expressed her regret. But we can still help out. Deepwater had already pulled out his bow and arrows as he sent a message to the sword demon. There should be a few teams feigning an attack, right? It'll be best if they can make it more chaotic. They're already doing that. Are you and Ku going to lead a team too? Asked the sword demon. Sure. But will they listen to orders? Asked Deepwater. Of course, it's a new guild. Sword demon said. Deepwater understood what he meant. In a new guild, the members weren't familiar with each other, so the guild leader could only directly appoint the team leader. Everyone didn't know the strength of the team leader, so there was no need to be convinced. Deepwater quickly received a team invitation. After entering the team, the other party had already handed him the position of team leader. Then, he heard exclamations in the channel, "Ah! Deepwater? Is it that Deepwater? The one who used to be one of the 5 roaches?" Deepwater calmly said, "That's me." "Ah!" Everyone cried out in shock. "Keep pretending." There were still some who disagreed. "Who is this?" Question marks everywhere. "My wife," Deepwater said with a bitter face. "Hello, sister-in-law." This time, there were greetings everywhere. In online games, an expert was the big brother, and an expert's wife was obviously his sister-in-law. Our target is towards the east. Everyone listen up, we'll be moving towards the direction of the breakthrough at any time. Deepwater said. Understood. When the players in the team saw that their team leader was an expert, they were naturally even more convinced. Prepare the trap, towards the west. Boundless, you go with the main team. You won't be able to keep up with our speed. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka said to Boundless Mang as he led the team out. Boundless Mang nodded his head. He went to the main team with warriors and mages. Although the main team's mobility was a bit lacking, their firepower was the fiercest. Our target is towards the south, is everyone's ammunition ready? Imperial Sky Divine Ming, as the leader, was also giving out instructions. Reporting, Team Leader. You're heading towards the north. I know. I'm just talking right now. Do I have to head south? Yutian Shinming turned 180 degrees and didn't panic. Team formation complete. Distance 150 meters from the enemy. Prepare to move out. We'll engage in combat before 100 meters. Sword Demon ordered. His words sounded a bit wrong, but everyone understood what he meant. The distance of 100 meters referred to the distance between the encirclement and the center of the circle. 4 teams moved out at the same time. Water Depth, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka, and Yutian Shinming were all agile teams of around 20 people. They were very mobile and their goal wasn't to kill or injure the opponent, but to let the opponent know of their existence. They couldn't let these teams deal a strong blow to the main team to achieve the goal of dividing the opponent's strength. But at this time, after the 4 teams moved out, the opponent also quickly made adjustments. The goal of these 3 faint teams was seen through by the opponent. The opponent continued to shrink the encirclement while starting to move. The defense in the east, south, and west gradually became thinner. The center of gravity was clearly converging towards the north where Sword Demon's main team was. The plan has been seen through. Water Depth hurriedly sent a message to Sword Demon. The feint team could only do feints. With their pure profession, although they faced the opponent's weak defense, they had no way of breaking out. Hee, such a simple plan. It's not surprising that it was seen through. Sword Demon said. What do you have up your sleeves? Water Depth asked. Actually, our team is also a feint team. Sword Demon said. What? The opponent has seen through our plan. They will naturally withdraw their forces towards our side, so your defense will be weak. Sword Demon said. Weak is weak, but we. Water Depth suddenly paused. The 3 feint teams had few people and their professions were thin. It seemed like they didn't have the strength to turn into the main team, but if someone was there, Yutian, break out. Sword Demon said in the channel. Got it. Yutian Shinming responded and the entire team began to advance. The archers released arrows, but it caused a burst of laughter from the surrounding opponents. These 20 or so archers, what other tricks did they want to play? The leading player in charge of this team lazily waved his hand, and the heavy warriors immediately went forward to cover. The opponents were all archers, so there was no need to play long-range shooting with them. Since they wanted to break out of the encirclement, they had to rush to the front. If the archers rushed to the front, then what were they? At that time, they would be at our mercy. The leading player calculated proudly. Seeing the opponents approach, the nearby warriors and thieves were all excited and ready to work. A figure appeared without any warning. There was clearly a distance of 6 meters, but it was as if this person didn't exist. This person had suddenly appeared in the encirclement of the players. A flash of fire flashed around him. He seemed to have turned twice, and after 2 revolutions, a circle of white light rose. It's him. The leading player knew who this person was the moment before he was killed. He was very depressed. The encirclement was so big, but why did he have to meet him? At the same time, he was very clear that with this person, this thin defense wouldn't be able to hold on. Qianli Drunk is breaking out from the south. The encirclement of players quickly spread this news. It's okay, let him break out. Qianli Drunk isn't all of them. There are more guys that have been surrounded by us. The leaders surrounding the players' command seemed to have expected this situation, so they didn't seem too flustered. Take care of Qianli Drunk. Even 1,000 people wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Although they had more people at the moment, in terms of quality, they really couldn't compare to singing to drinking. Therefore, getting drunk from 1,000 miles away wasn't on their agenda in the first place. Moreover, their goal wasn't Qianli Drunk. Although Qianli Drunk was the main culprit who destroyed the victory of the attacking players, at this moment, all the players were more jealous of the reward of the city battle. The reward of Qianli Drunk, something like searching the name of a wanted player, frightened the players, but from a reward point of view, it was very balanced. They all felt that this was really a trash reward. Giving Qianli Drunk was a blessing from the heavens. But it was very overpowered. After combining, they actually monopolized the reward of 6 city districts. It was really intolerable. Perhaps everyone had such a mentality, but this group of players was using it as motivation to vent their anger on Roland. They needed to vent, otherwise they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. The medium of online games made it even easier for them to vent their frustrations. Other than suffering from some spit, there didn't seem to be any consequences. Moreover, if they killed very overpowered, the players in Cloud City would probably clap their hands in joy, right? Don't worry about Qianli Drunk. Hurry up and kill all the overpowered people, kill them all. The guild leaders who came to surround very overpowered were all shouting crazily in their guild channel. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.